welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a good friend of the podcast, Ivetta Abramyan. She does a tremendous job looking at this great game of college basketball. She also works quite a few of these conference tournaments. She's going to be doing a lot of work behind the scenes for the NCAA tournament as well. So she's got some very good access to everything that we've got in college basketball. You may recall if you've ever listened to the Greg Peterson experience back when that was on VSiN. She was the person that would always bring us every week the How to Bet on the Weather segment. So she does a tremendous job on so many different fronts. We're going to talk with her about these conference tournaments that we're seeing this week, some of the edges that she's got in some of these smaller conference tournaments as well, a few teams that she feels like have a little bit of value, and she is currently working the Atlantic Sun tournament as we're doing this as well. So we're going to ask her about that conference tournament, some of the nooks and crannies, because you've actually got multiple locations in which these games are going to be played today. So we're going to be chatting about that and so much more in the final segment. Going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, maybe does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
A game through yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The rough season for Oregon just continues. They get absolutely lambasted by Illinois, this by a count of 80-54, and among your worst against the spread teams in all of college basketball, Oregon is right up there with them, and Illinois, they've been able to do a very rock-solid job of making money thus far this season with the cover. Illinois now 17-12 against the spread for our good friends, the Oregon Ducks. They fall to now 11-18 against the spread, as for Illinois, they were able to get a good performance out of Andrei Stojakovic, 21 points, 12 rebounds. For Oregon, they go 5 of 29 from three-point range in this game. They lose a rebound battle, 48-36. They lose a turnover battle, 8-6. You had David Mirkovic be able to supply 19 points in this game as well. For Illinois, they only go 10 of 36 from three-point range, but just still an absolute dismantling there. For Texas Tech, they had won and covered each of their first 3 games without JT Toppin, but bit of a reality check on Tuesday. TCU, they go on the road. They get a 73-65 win, as for Texas Tech, they went cold from 3. Now, Jalen Petty went 5 of 7 from 3, 17 points. Donovan Atwell, he went 5 of 13 from 3, 19 points. Guys outside those two went a combined 1 of 11, including Christian Anderson, who had just 11 points in this game. TCU wins the turnover battle, 15-12. For TCU, they go 7-20 from three-point range. David Punch provides some punch down low, 10 rebounds. Xavier Edmonds, 20 points, 12 rebounds. So TCU, a big win for them. South Carolina continues their rough year as they lose, and they do not cover against Tennessee, 78-59 the final. Tennessee has not been great against the spread. 13-16-1 against the spread. South Carolina now 13-17 against the spread. And there was no Nate Ament in this game for Tennessee, but there was Felix Opara, 20 points, 8 rebounds. Jacoby Gillespie, only 8 points, but he supplies 12 assists for Tennessee. They win their turnover battle, 12-6. They win the rebound battle, 34-23 for South Carolina. They go 9-27 on their threes and 9-22 on their twos, as Michi Johnson had 20 points. Not a lot of anything else from anyone else. And then for Alabama, they go on the road and they lose to Georgia, 98-88 the final. Alabama does go 16 out of 42 from three-point range. A nice scoring expose here from LeBaron Filan with 26 points, but they, in this game, lose the rebound battle 40-30 for Georgia. 13 out of 29 from 3. Cannon Catchings comes up with 32 points, 7 of 13 from 3-point range. Georgia goes 15 of 17 at the free throw line, so a very nice quality win for them. Nice quality win for North Carolina as well, 67-63 the final. They've actually been able to do a pretty solid job here without Caleb Wilson. They go 12 of 27 from 3 as Luka Bogovic off the bench. He was the main man, 20 points, 6 of 10 from 3-point range. Henry Visar throws in their 13 points, 6 rebounds as North Carolina wins the rebound battle 37-36. They win the turnover battle 10-9, and Clemson just 4 of 6 at the free throw line. So a big win there for North Carolina. Also out there in the ACC, Virginia, no cover, but they do get the win against Wake Forest, 75-70 the final. As for Virginia, if you didn't get the cover in this game, it's because they went 10 of 32 from 3-point range, but Shakari White off the bench was able to supply the team with 14 points. Virginia wins the rebound battle 43-33. They do lose the turnover battle in this game 10-8 though, and for Wake Forest, they only go 39% from the floor. The lone undefeated team in all of college basketball, they remain undefeated, but they do not get the cover, as Miami of Ohio has been a top 5 cover team all season long. With this non-cover, they now fall to 19-8 against the spread. Toledo was down double figures. They rallied back, but for Miami of Ohio, they go to 30-0, 74-72, the final for Miami of Ohio. There was a little bit of fear that Luke Skolczak was not going to be able to play in this game. He did. He was able to give the team 11 points, so that helps him out for Miami of Ohio. 12 of 32 from three-point. They did lose a rebound battle, though, 35-31. They do lose the turnover battle, 15-10, and for Toledo, they go just 2 of 2 at the free throw line, so that was an interesting one. You had no Thomas Hall out there for Florida, but for Florida, they are now against the spread in SEC play, 13-4, 108-74. They completely dump truck Mississippi State, and Mississippi State has been one of your least profitable teams in all of college basketball. 10-20 against the spread. It's been all sorts of awful for them this far this season. And for Mississippi State, you did have Joshua Hubbard supply 21 points, but for Florida, 45 of 82 from the floor. They win the rebound battle 53-26. Ruben Chinyelu, another double-double, 11 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks. For Florida, 8 of 22 from 3 is very good for them, and they won the turnover battle 13-5. So nice clean domination out there. St. John's has been a little bit of a suspect team against the spread recently. Overall for the season, still 16-12-1 against the spread, and Georgetown has been a pretty rough team against the spread this far this season, 11-18, but for Georgetown, did a nice job holding in there on Tuesday. They don't get the win, but 72-69. This one was a sweat with Georgetown up 34-26 at the half. For St. John's, they go just 6 of 28 from 3. Georgetown was able to get a lot out of Kayvon Moretti off the bench. He was able to supply the team with 20 points, went 4 of 8 from 3-point range. Georgetown does lose the turnover battle, though, 14-9, and that ultimately costed them the game on a night where St. John's did shoot just 39% from the floor. For Kansas, not a great effort out of them. They go on the road and they get lambasted against Arizona State by a count of 70-60. And for Kansas, they just continue to cash you unders. And Arizona State has actually been a really good against the spread team this year. Now 19-10-1 against the spread for Kansas. They've been pretty solid at home. They've been pretty not so solid away from home this far this season. And with the under, that means that Kansas, they are back to being a top 10 team to the under. 9 overs to 21 unders thus far this season. As for Kansas, Darren Peterson, for much of the first half, had 0 points. He does finish up with 15 points, but took him 18 shots to get there. Kansas shoots 29% from floor. Arizona State just 19 of 59 from the field, but 24 out of 30 at the free throw line. They won the turnover battle 17-14. They do lose rebound battle 55-43, but Mo Odom 23 points. So Arizona State, they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to have this up by the time Nebraska and UCLA is final. Currently, they're in the first half, but Nebraska has been a very good under team, 9 overs to 20 unders, and they've been a pretty solid against the spread team, been a little bit more wobbly recently, and right now UCLA is taking it to them as Nebraska entered in the night 16-12-1 against the spread. Vanderbilt just barely edges out Ole Miss this by a count of 89-86, and Ole Miss has been one of those teams that just has not made you money thus far this season. Now 11-19 against the spread with the cover, but I believe that they've covered 3 out of their last 4 games, as Ole Miss does go 8 of 17 from 3-point range. J.J. Storr off the bench was able to supply 14 points, but he also supplied 6 turnovers, as that was the undoing for Ole Miss. They lose the turnover battle 17-9 on a night where Vanderbilt only shoots 39% from the floor. They get the job done with Tyler Tanner being able to put in their 34 points, so that was massive for them. If you're looking at just trend-wise what we're seeing in college basketball, some of the unranked teams that have not been able to make you money thus far this season. It's been very interesting to see this team and the way that they have just failed to cover spreads all season long. Northeastern now 10-19 against the spread. They get absolutely mollywopped in a CAA battle against Monmouth. Monmouth goes on the road. They get the job done by a count of 89-83. As for Northeastern, defense has just been ghastly. They allow Monmouth to be able to go 8 of 20 from 3-point. Northeastern actually wins the rebound battle 30-29, but lost the turnover battle 10-6. Northeastern loses this game despite going 9 of 17 from 3-point range. So Another rough one out there for them. UMass has been 11-19 against the spread thus far this season, as they've been a rough team out there in the MAC, to say the least. And for UMass, they do get the cover against Ohio, 94-82 the final. Want to talk about other teams that have been rough against the spread thus far this season? The old Bobcats of Ohio, not really making a lot of money right now at 11-17 against the spread. They're standing in the way of a undefeated regular season for Miami of Ohio on Friday, but for UMass, they do go 53% from the floor. They did lose the turnover battle 12-8, but won their rebound battle 37-30, so they were able to cash you that ticket. Ball State has been a team that's been relatively rough against the spread this far this season as well, at 13-14-1 against the spread, and they had that terrible game against Northern Illinois a few nights ago, but in overtime against Western Michigan, 74-71, they do find a way to be able to get the job done there. Armani Ziegler, 28 points, 7 boards, 8 assists, so yay verily to them. Eastern Michigan has actually been one of your best against the spread teams in college basketball this year. They're currently 20-9 against the spread. They do fall to Buffalo on Tuesday by a kind of 72-67. This was a closing spread in a lot of places of 5.5. We opened up 3.5. So dependent upon your number, if you took Eastern Michigan late, you might have gotten there. Took them early, you probably did not. But Buffalo 9-24 from 3-point. Ryan Sable, he was able to spy the team with 27 points. So that one was a very fun and interesting game to say the least. Another team has been very good against the spread for you thus far this season has been the Pride of Hofstra, 19-10 against the spread thus far this season. For Hofstra, they take it to Drexel, 62-51, so they were able to land you a nice cover there as Cruz Davis, only 8 points. That's your top guy, but Preston Eadman step up for 19 points for the Hofstra defense. They stepped up in a big way. They allowed Drexel to go 10 of 27 from 3-point range, but Drexel took 22 2-point shots and they only made 6 of them, and for Drexel, they lose the rebound battle 43-27 as well, and Hofstra, they did have 14 turnovers in this game, but they do find a way to be able to persevere, get the job done, so that was very well done by them. It's also been very well done what we've been seeing out of this team as well, as we've had quite a few covers this year out of UW Green Bay, as we've got Horizon League Conference Tournament action now in our lives. They find a way to persevere, get past Fort Wayne by a count of 64-56, very low scoring game in this one, as Fort Wayne 5 of 24 from 3-point range, just 5 of 18 for Green Bay, but Marcus Hall 19 big points, so UW Green Bay all of a sudden 19-11 against the spread, and for Purdue Fort Wayne, they wrap up this season not so great against the spread at 12-17 against the spread, and we did see a few Patriot League teams have their season come to an end, as Bucknell was able to end the season of Army 65-55, the final in an almighty slog. Army took a lot of threes this year, and they went 5 of 42 from 3-point range. Would have thought that they might have tried something a little bit different when they just weren't falling. They had 55 points and they took 42 3-point shots. That's sadness right there. And Bucknell wasn't much better at 4 of 21 from 3-point range, but they decided to take a few twos and they got to the free throw line, 11 of 18 at the charity stripe. Bucknell and Army even up 12-12 in terms of turnover department, but man, 5 of 22 from 3-point range. That's a way to lose a game. And holy cross, they were down throughout the entirety of this game against Lafayette. They stormed back. They outscored Lafayette in the second half, 48-38, 82-77. They end up getting the job done. As a matter of fact, for Holy Cross, they were down late in this game, but they were able to go on a nice little bit of a bonsai charge late. In fact, in the first half, they were down as many as 9 points in this game. And for Holy Cross, they shoot 8 of 24 from 3-point range. And Lafayette, they did go 10 of 21 from the outside, but for Holy Cross, the reason why they won this game, they went 18 out of 18 at the free throw line, and they won the turnover battle 8-7. So, yay, verily there, and we've got some Sunbelt action in our lives for Old Dominion. They do advance, but they do not get the cover against Louisiana Monroe, 87-80 the final, and Louisiana Monroe is going to wrap up the season as one of your top over teams in all of college basketball. For Monroe, 20 overs, 9 unders, and a push, and for Louisiana Monroe, Lavelle Broneau, 17 points, 15 rebounds. He did his part, but for Old Dominion, 13 out of 20 from 3-point range with Casey Shaw supplying 25 points. So they do find a way to be able to advance in that bracket. And Louisiana, 84-75. They take down Georgia State as Louisiana. It's been a very slow team all season long, but they got it going on this day. 26 out of 35 at the free throw line. They won the rebound battle 40-30. They won the turnover battle 12-9, and Jackson Oliveira was able to come up with 29 big points. Then, by the way, for Old Dominion, now up to 20 overs to 10 unders to be able to get back to them, and they had a push along the way as well. Ole Miss Miss has also been a really good over team for you, 19 overs to 10 unders. They were able to get another one in the books there. And for Air Force, they've actually become a pretty solid over team, 19 overs to 11 unders, but it's because they are giving up all sorts of points, and they got lambasted once again on Tuesday. As for Grand Canyon, 86 to 60, they're able to get the win. They're able to get the cover in this game. As for Air Force, they have covered now 3 out of their last 17 games. Not been a great run for them. For Grand Canyon, 9 to 21 from three-point range in this one. And Grand Canyon has been a pretty solid under team for you thus far this season. 12 overs, 17 unders, and a push. If you're looking at your creme de la creme under team, that would be Fordham. They're going to be in action actually on Wednesday, so we'll see if they're going to be able to keep that going or not. Another team that has been pretty rock solid to the under that we did see in action on Tuesday as well is West Virginia. 10 overs, 19 unders, and a push as far this season. They went on the road against Kansas State, a Kansas State team that is without their coach. And for Kansas State, they were able to rise up in the octagon of doom in this day, 65 to 63. The final is West Virginia, just 6 of 23 from three-point range in this game. They went 9 of 16 at the free throw line. Kansas State, 19 out of 25 at the charity stripe. And for Kansas State, they actually played this game without PJ Haggerty, but they found a way to be able to persevere here despite losing the turnover battle 16 to 13. So that was a pretty solid winner for them. And then Cincinnati, 10 overs and 19 unders, anything but an under in this game against BYU, 90 to 68. The final is BYU. Sub 500 without Richie Saunders. I don't think that they've won a game without Richie Saunders other than that Iowa State game. And for Cincinnati, 10 to 23 from three-point. Every single one of their starters gets into double figures. And then you did see Oklahoma State go on the road against Central Florida in a wild one, 111 to 104 of the final. Hopefully you didn't have the under in this game, as went way over for Central Florida. 33 out of 45 at the free throw line, 32 out of 40 for Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State wins the rebound battle, 47 to 39 for Oklahoma State. You had in this game 27 points out of Anthony Roy, and Central Florida had every single one of their starters go into double figures, but allowed Oklahoma State to go 9 of 23 from three-point range. So that was an over, and that was a game that was able to get the job done for you. And then one other under team, Boston College. They have been very good to the under, 11 overs to 19 unders. They hold in there for a cover against Virginia Tech, 72 to 63 the final, and this was a very underwhelming game with Virginia Tech holding Boston College to 5 of 22 three-point shooting, but Bowden Kapke down low was able to do his part, 25 points, 8 rebounds for Boston College. They win the rebound battle, 36 to 32, but Virginia Tech is able to survive because they went 11 of 24 from three-point range on this day. If you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball, it's been an underdog and an under season thus far. Overall for the season, the unders are hitting at about 50.8%, 2,644 unders to 2,565 overs, with 1 or 2 results pending for Tuesday, and the underdogs hitting at about 51.2%, 2,669 and 2,539 against the spread. Meanwhile, in the last 7 days in college basketball, underdogs hitting at only about 48.3%. The favorites have had a nice run of things. Underdogs 172 and 184 against the spread. The unders hitting very solidly, though, 190 unders to 166 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Ivetta Abramyan about these conference tournaments right here on Let's Go Soup with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beeson Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts, and great to get this lady aboard as we've got Ivetta Abramyan on. You know her from her college basketball tour this year. I think she's been to over 35 different arenas. She does a great job following this great game of college basketball. I know that for those that remember my show, The Greg Peterson Experience, she was always doing a great job giving us weather reports to be able to bet on the weather in terms of that as well. She does a great job handy handicapping this great game of college basketball and so much more. And you're able to follow her on the old Twitter/X at her first and last name, Ivetta Abramyan. That is Ivetta on the first name, and then last name Abramyan all together. And Ivetta, great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. Merry March, the best time of the year. It seems like this season went by extra fast. It always goes by fast, but it seems like March just snuck up on us here, but very excited. You can just feel the energy in the air. It's just incredible.
Oh, it certainly is, and now we are getting into that best time of year when it comes to these conference tournaments. The smaller ones start this week, the bigger ones, they're going to be coming next week, and when it comes to personally how you evaluate these conference tournament games, do you handicap them a little bit differently than, say, regular season games? Because I do think that's a little bit of a different dynamic, whereas with some of these bubble teams, they're obviously looking for style points, and I do think that when it comes to these mid/low major teams, it doesn't matter whether they win by 1 or 100. If your only shot to be able to get into the NCAA tournament is to win your conference tournament, I think you're going to do so by any means necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great because for some of these teams, you know, you really have to not just look at the full body of work, but you have to look at these various aspects, like have they ever made the tournament? Is this the first year that they're eligible? Just looking at all sorts of information. And, you know, obviously you've got neutral site tournaments, you still have some campus site tournaments, and it's eat or be eaten at this point. And one thing that just everybody just forgets to bring up is the fact that unlike the teams that are, you know, safely have an at-large or are looking for style points, like you said, a lot of these players, you know, will never be able to play on their home court again. It adds that extra layer of complexity and that extra hunger and that extra drive for a lot of these mid-major players.
Yep, it certainly does. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get out of these conference tournaments this week. And I know you're going to be doing some work actually with the Atlantic Sun tournament as well. And before we dive in on some of the other tournaments, just how do you take a look at that conference tournament? Because the first games are going to be played over at North Florida's arena, if I saw that correct. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to see that dynamic because, as we both know, a lot of the teams in the Atlantic Sun are out there in the great state of Florida. And I would have to think that that gives them a little bit of an edge over a team like, say, an Austin Peay, who is really good in the conference, but they have to travel from the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ASUN is interesting. So it's a neutral site tournament for the first time this year. They moved their headquarters to Jacksonville. They are having all the Friday and beyond games at the big arena downtown at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena. But the Tuesday, so this is for men's and women's tournaments. Men's starts on Wednesday. The days that they have 4 games from noon all the way to 7:30, 3 of the games are at UNF, the UNF arena. And then that 4th game is played at JU. So because UNF can't play at UNF because it's a home, it would, you know, be a home environment. Any game that UNF is a part of will be played at Jacksonville University Swisher Gym. So it is really interesting. So the campus sites for the first few days. And then once we get into the quarterfinals on Friday, then all the games will be played at the big arena downtown. I'm glad you brought that up because the fans are great for the 2 Jacksonville teams, for both North Florida and for Jacksonville. I don't know if you caught any of that game on Saturday, the River City Rumble with UNF versus JU, but the score was 20-49 at halftime. So UNF barely scored 20 points and that arena was packed. I mean, their fans show up even when the team isn't great. They're not doing that well this year, but those fans show up and the Jacksonville fans travel as well. So I definitely think that the tournament would be much better attended if those teams were better than they are this season, but those fans will still be there. So there perhaps might be an early exit, but the fans will show up. And I'm hoping to see some of the out-of-state fans show up as well. Like you mentioned, Austin Peay, they have a pretty strong fan base. Lipscomb, Queens, and just the rest of the league show up. It's really interesting because there's a lot of parity in the ASUN, especially you have the top 4 teams You have Central Arkansas, Austin P, Queens, and Lipscomb. So you've got those four, but among them, any of those four teams can win. Central Arkansas is the top player in the league in Cameron Hunter. He just had his fifth 30-point game against Queens. Both Queens and Central Arkansas have never made the NCAA tournament. This is the first year that Queens is eligible, so they can easily take it. They're a very well-rounded team. They have a terrific offense. I think they're at plus 375 on a lot of books, so you might be able to find better. And then you've got the middle of the pack teams like FGCU, West Georgia, Bellarmine. They can wreak havoc in the ASUN as well. Bellarmine's got a terrific offense. They're 76th in offensive efficiency, but literally the worst defense in the country, 365th. So they're an interesting team. Through early February, it was something like 30% of all ASUN games were decided by 4 points or less. So it's a very high variance league. I'm really, really excited to see how things shake out in Jacksonville.
Oh, I am as well. A team like Stetson, for a really good example, they were not great in non-conference play. They lose their top scorer in Mr. Phillips, and ever since then, they've been able to take off. They've been shooting it really well from three-point range in Atlantic Sun play, so that's going to create some variance. You've got an awesome P team that generates a lot of turnovers. They've been pretty good in terms of guarding the arc, so that's certainly going to be a fun one, as we do have Ivetta Abramyan joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and certainly that's going to be a fun one, and I'm sure that you've got your eyes on this one as well. This one is going to be getting started up here midweek with the Guards of Missouri Valley Conference Tournament, and how do you take a look at that league? Because I do think that out of all the conference tournaments that start this week, this is the one that probably the casual fans have the most interest in. And I don't know if you've caught this over the last few years, but in terms of a betting perspective, I always love the unders in this tournament because I have no idea how and I have no idea why, but there are certain venues that you just don't get a good sight line for three-point shooting. And it feels like every single year in the Missouri Valley Conference, nobody can shoot three-pointers in that tournament.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Arch Madness throws people off. Which is interesting because they play there, every year. So you would think that that's something they'd be used to. But, this one's tough for me to handicap because the teams in the Valley this year have been kind of hot and cold. So they've been hard to gauge. I just don't see, just looking at the numbers, I just don't see, like Bradley can win it. UIC could win it. I mean, there's really any team, Illinois State. That's just one of those that I think could really go anywhere. My favorite in the MVC is Murray State. I think value-wise, they're the best value. I know I saw at least plus 900 for them. So that would be my pick because, again, it's just such a crapshoot, such a tough tournament to predict just because they just beat up on each other throughout the season.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I do think that that's going to be one of the most difficult ones to be able to gauge, and that leads to a good point as well. When it comes to these conference tournaments, do you like to bet a little bit more futures, be able to take a shot there, or do you go a little bit more game to game? Because I do feel like it's different strokes for different folks, and there are some people that they do a little bit of both. How do you take a look at these conference tournaments? Do you like to just be able to bet a future before the tournament starts, or do you like going a little bit more game to game?
If I have a good feel for the league and there's good value on some of these futures, then I'll take the futures. But of course, we don't know the matchups in advance. So sometimes if a good matchup presents itself. So I do a little bit of both. I think there's some really good value out there on a lot of the smaller leagues, the Big Sky, CAA, the MAC, the SoCon, the Summit League, the Horizon League, the ASUN. So I think some of those, there's really great value, to the point where, you have to take some of these, especially some of these teams that have been red hot closing out the season, because, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So there's some really, really great value there. Just looking at the last 10 games that all of these teams have played. I don't do a lot of futures for the Power Five just because usually, in my opinion, there's just not a lot of value. There's just so much data on the Power Five, but eventually, here and there I'll dabble. But yeah, so I like to do the smaller league conference futures, and then if there's a spicy matchup here and there, I'll definitely jump on that.
Oh, no question about it. It's always a lot of fun because there's so many different ways to be able to find value when it comes to conference tournaments this year. And we just talked about two of the conference tournaments that we're going to be seeing this week. Is there one or two that you do feel strongly about, maybe whether that be a conference where you've got a great angle with regards to game-to-game betting, or maybe there's just a team or two that you really like from a futures perspective that you feel like might be a little bit undervalued.
I really like the Sun Belt. I know it's a completely wild situation right now.
The stepladder format.
Exactly. So, they don't call it the Fun Belt for nothing. So this bracket is a complete exercise in futility. We have that 6-way tie for second place with 6 teams sitting at 11-7, and their overall records are pretty close as well. So it's not even like they're just tied in league play. Their overall records are, just a game or two apart. It'll be interesting to see how a team like Marshall, who has the best offense and then the second worst defense in the league, matches up with a team like Coastal Carolina, a more defensive-minded team. And they've been a thorn in their side because Marshall lost to them twice. And then we might get Arkansas State, South Alabama in the other part of the bracket. And South Alabama beat them twice in overtime. So, they'll be out for revenge. So there's some really, really cool storylines in the Sun Belt that might actually materialize given they win their games. And App State and Troy would be an interesting matchup if they can get past Texas State in the top part of the staircase, because the only time they played, it was that ugly 66-44 home loss where I think they held Troy to 15% from three. That App State defense came to play. They're one of the slowest teams in the nation. I think 357th in adjusted tempo, 363rd in free throw percentage. So it's kind of a weird team, but can be really fun to watch. And Texas State has been playing well. They've won 8 of their last 9. Again, I really like to look at, not the season-long stats, but how they've wrapped up the season. So my bold prediction is I think they'll battle Arkansas State for the championship. Arkansas State is at plus 500, and I think I got Texas State at plus 2,500 or somewhere around there. So great value there for both of those teams, obviously, because there are so many options in the Sun Belt. There's really a lot of value. But of course, the problem is that fatigue factor since they have to win so many games. So Arkansas State, I just love that team, but are they going to make it through the step ladder? Like you said, or are they going to fumble somewhere along the line? But I really want that Texas State, Arkansas State matchup. I think that both of those teams, they've just finished the season out really well.
Yep, it is going to be a lot of fun to be taking a look at that one. And then you've got South Alabama, who plays one of the most ridiculous styles I've ever seen. They force opponents to take over 62% of their field goal attempts from three-point range. So if they catch some bad three-point shooting teams, that could be great for them. Someone gets hot against them, they're done. So they're a very high-variance team that could provide a lot of value or none whatsoever as well. So that is certainly going to be a fun one to take a look at. And Ivetta, as we're getting into this time of year, we've been talking a lot about these smaller conference tournaments, and it could be a team from a smaller conference tournament. It could be a power conference team, but are there just a few teams in general that you're finding value on, whether they're playing their conference tournament this week or next week, that you just feel like are a little bit undervalued from a game-to-game perspective?
Yes, I like Wofford to win the SoCon. I think they already showed that they can beat the top teams in the league. And those late losses occurred without Kamari Holmes, their leading scorer. He also provides a lot in the rebounding category, but he's back. So I think if he stays healthy, that is a great pick. I know that was at plus 800 in some books. I'm not sure what it is now. It may have gone down some, but still a terrific value there for Wofford. I already mentioned Murray State. I think they're a good value at plus 900 or somewhere in that ballpark. That's just volatile tournament there. The Missouri Valley is just tough to predict, but I like those two. I think the horizon is obviously always chaos. Robert Morris has been red hot. They won their last 7. They swept Wright State, who was my favorite to win this league initially, but you know how crazy that tournament can be. And Detroit, I don't think we can rule out Detroit, but they've obviously started going back to the ones that we can still get futures on. Merrimack, they've been really impressive to me in the MAC. William and Mary is a good play, I think, at plus 700 for the CAA. And I like Portland State for the Big Sky, plus 385, plus 400, something like that. And I like St. Thomas to win the Summit. I know that it's a trendy pick. A lot of people are on them. I know they're small plus money, like plus 135, but I really like that team. I think they'll be tough to beat as well.
Oh, this is their first year of NCAA tournament eligibility as well. I remember being a gentleman at UW Oshkosh, a D3 university. We lost in the Final Four my junior year in college football, ironically enough, to St. Thomas. So all of us D3 alums are very much pulling for St. Thomas here. They have been a lot of fun to watch this year, and it would be nice to see a team from the great state of Minnesota get in the NCAA tournament because the Gophers have not done a lot of that. So that's one that I'm certainly looking out for. And Ivetta, you're doing such a great job looking at this great sport of college basketball. You've been traveling to arenas all across the nation all year long. You do such great insights. So love to get people at home know how they're able to follow you on social media and just what's all on tap for you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Ivetta Abramyan, IVETTA ABRAMYAN. I'll be at the ASUN tournament, and then I think I'm doing the quarterfinals of the Big Ten that Friday. And then I'm actually heading out to Vegas for championship Saturday for the WAC, the Mountain West, and the Big West. And then I think I'm doing the Midwest Regional. I'll be in Chicago for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. And then I will be on to the Final Four in Indy. So it is a very busy travel schedule. Definitely get over 50 games in by the time just the ASUN is over. Well, it's convenient for me because they play so many games. But yeah, so it's a very, very busy month, and look forward to seeing you in Vegas. Always a pleasure running into you. Thanks again. I really appreciate it, and best of luck, and enjoy the action and enjoy this wonderful time of year.
It certainly will be a great time the next few weeks. We've got ourselves so many great games. Ivetta is going to be a part of so many of them, and it was great to be able to get her insights on the conference tournaments today. Big thanks to Ivetta for joining me on Coast to Coast Soup, part of the VSiN Family podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. We're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family podcast. Was great to get Ivetta Abramyan aboard. She does a lot of work going to all these different arenas. She's always out here in lovely Las Vegas. I've had her on the Greg Peterson Experience before. You can tell that even though she doesn't work for like any of these major sports betting networks or anything like that, she's certainly a gal that knows her stuff, and that's what this podcast is all about. I know that a lot of people talk about good/bad content creators. I like people that actually, you can tell bet the games, have really great knowledge, and there are plenty of women out there that aren't getting the light that they necessarily deserve. Ivetta is certainly one of them, and she does a tremendous job looking at this great game. You can tell her passion, and was absolutely amazing to get her aboard today. So big thanks to Ivetta for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is a little bit convoluted, so I do put the order of the games in the description, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, on the old Twitter/X. I put the time markers in there. It takes me about an hour after this uploads to get those in, since I personally listen back to them, but it goes with the bigger games that are not involved in conference tournaments first, and then conference tournaments with the order of tip time by conference tournaments, and then the extra games board, those are conference tournaments as well involving the smaller conferences. That would be the Atlantic Sun up first, then your lone Big South game, and then the NEC conference game. So not necessarily clean and easy, but it is what it is, and we've got ourselves some great action. Let's get started. 689, 690 on the card. It is Butler, and they're going to be playing us to Creighton, and Creighton finds themselves as a slim underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. 155.5 is the total. Did set a total here of a 154.5, so 155 plus does become my buy point on the under. Now I recognize that Creighton has been not great on defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This is a unit that is currently checking in well outside the top 200 in all of college basketball, 242nd. Meanwhile, you've got a Butler team that's been up, down, all around thus far this season. With Butler, they're about 183rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and it is a Butler team that is very much looking to kick up tempo, and their main forte has been grabbing second and third chances. Butler 68th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, 61st in terms of percentage of missed shots. They become an offensive rebound, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay it here. It It's up them as a 2.5-point favorite. Have Michael Ajayi give you 15-plus points, a little bit over 11 rebounds per game. Finley Bizjack continues with Bizjack teams as he's been the top scorer, 17 points, 2.5 assists. From three-point, he launches at about 35% for three. Ajayi also does chip in there about 3 assists and a steal per contest. You've had Jamie Kaiser be able to step up, shoot about 35% from three, but it's a Butler team that they are outside the top 150 with regards to 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages. They need to cover at the free throw line. They do shoot just 71.2% at the free throw line, but they've been a top 150 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Creighton team that is looking to go bombs away from 3-point. You're in the top 70 with regards to percentage of their shots that come from three. They're only shooting about 35% from the outside, as Austin Schwartz has just fallen off of the map recently. He's averaging 11 points per game, was really good towards the beginning part of conference play. He's just went very cold recently. He's had 8 points or fewer in 3 out of the last 4 games. Josh Dix continues to give you about 12.5 points per contest, but you don't have a lot of rebounding on this Creighton team. Jason Green, he currently gives you 5.8 boards, 10.5 points per game. Lone guy on the roster that's giving you over 4.2 rebounds per game. You have Owen Freeman, who's been able to give you some boards, but he's been in and out of the lineup recently. That's not been great, to say the least. It's a Creighton team that, to their credit, they don't put you on the free throw line. Top 35 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. They also don't get to the free throw line. Bottom 20 team in terms of getting to the free throw line on a per possession basis as well. This team has been outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. More country average with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Won't put you under duress for Creighton. They're outside the top 250 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And I think that Butler doing the little things allows them to get the job done at a 155 plus in on the under end. With Butler, I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them. 691, 692. Indiana is going to be playing us in Minnesota. The state with the smallest strengths in the union. Minnesota is a 6.5 to a 7.5 point underdog. So on this game, it is 137.5 to a 138.5. Only thing that's smaller than a Minnesota is the way that Indiana's been coming up late in games on offense. That said, I did set a total of a 138.5. At a 138 or less, I am in on the over. You've got an Indiana team that's still been able to execute well down low. They're a top 40 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, giving themselves no second and third chances whatsoever. In terms of percentage of missed shots, they become an offensive rebound. Indiana is 308th in the country. They rebound 24.4% of their misses, and Minnesota not much better. 285th, they rebound 25.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Here's why I can't trust Minnesota, though. Their home and road splits. They are giving up quite literally 20.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. When Minnesota's at home, this is a good defense. They're a top 45 team at home in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In games played away from home, they're hovering outside the top 300. So that's a little bit of an issue. And for Indiana, this is not a bad defense. I'm not going to call it amazing. They're about 135th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they certainly are much better than that at home. In their home games, they do improve into the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And you still have the best scorer out there on the floor on the side of Indiana. That would be Lamar Wilkerson. Now, I will say on the flip side, you've had Cape Tyson for Minnesota shoot right around about 40% for 3, 19 plus points per game. Throws in their 5 boards. I like his game, but with Wilkerson, 21.5 points, 2.5 assists. He's shooting 38% from 3. Tucker DeVries is that do-it-all guy, 14 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds per game. And then you do have Sam Alexis, who supplies 5 rebounds per game. For Indiana, it's been a rough go of it for them on the glass, but the interior defense is not bad. They're a top 60 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are just there outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but this is not a Minnesota team that's really going to light you up from 3. They're shooting about 34.8% for 3. We'll say it's been much better in conference play than non-conference play. Non-conference play, they were really not getting a whole heck of a lot going, but they've been dealing with a little bit of an injury to Jalen Crocker-Johnson. We haven't seen him take the floor in about 3 to 4 weeks, and that's their number 2 scorer with 13.5 points per game. Tyson does shoot 42% from 3, and then Bobby Durkin shoots 39.5% from 3. Pretty much alone 2 guys that see meaningful minutes that shoot above 32.5% from 3-point with Crocker-Johnson out of the fold. Langston Reynolds along with Isaac Kusama. They do a nice job, give you a combined about 8.4 assists per game. They both give you between 10 and 11 points per contest for a Minnesota team that's in the top 100 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And this is a Minnesota team that's going to look to make things a big giant slog, 358th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Indiana's not slow, but they're not ridiculously slow. They check in about 244th in terms of total possessions per game. I think that this is going to be just close enough for late fouls, and for Minnesota, they just have been a very different defense away from home rather than at home. I think that that's just enough for Indiana to get the job done. At a 138 or less, I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 7 here with Indiana. 693, 694, you've got LaSalle playing host to Fordham. Fordham is a road favorite here of 2 to 2.5 points. So on this game, 133 to 133.5. I set my line at 2.5, so 2 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay with Fordham, but if I were put between a 2 and a 3, I would rather lay 2 than take 3 because LaSalle, they're a wet match in a dark cave right now, especially on offense. Man, they are getting absolutely nothing generated whatsoever. Not to say that this Fordham team has been the Mona Lisa Vitos for putting points on the board for Fordham right now in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 266th, but LaSalle 340th, and their lone edge is the fact that they've been okay in terms of grabbing second and third chances, 117th in the country in terms of a percentage of missed shots resulting in an offensive rebound. Fordham, though, 22nd in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They only allow you to rebound about 24% of your missed shots as an offensive rebound. LaSalle outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They shoot 30.4% from three-point range. That is outside the top 335. They're outside the top 320 in terms of their two-point shooting percentage as well. Now, Fordham, they shoot 28.6% from 3. That's a bottom 10 mark in the country, but as a Fordham defense has been quite rock solid, 52nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Fordham, they also have the best scorer in this game as well as Deshaun Reeves has not been able to find it from three-point range, but he has been able to find a way to put 17.5 points and 4.5 boards per contest on the board. Also gives you 2 steals, 4 assists per game. You've had Christian Arnuri be able to give you 5 assists per contest. Fordham, country average team in terms of turnovers on offense and on defense, but they do a nice job locking it down low. Top 75 team in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage. They have that nice edge on the glass. Now, they do shoot just 69% at the free throw line if they need to cover there, but it's not as if this LaSalle team is some sort of a great shooting team themselves. They shoot 71% at the free throw line. For LaSalle, they're also getting lambasted on defense. They are well outside the top 260 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis because they're outside the top 275 in terms of opponent's two-point and three-point shooting percentage. Rob Dockery, Hickory Dickory Doc, he gives you 11 points and 6 rebounds per game around the clock. You've got Jerome Brewer, who's been dealing with injury. He's been able to give the team right around about 11 points per game, but it's looking like he's going to be out of this game. Jaden Marshall throws in the 12 points, so shoot 86% of the free throw line, 34% from 3, and he's the only player other than Eric Acker that shoots above 32% from three-point range for this team. I think that the Fordham defense is just going to really put this game into a chokehold, and it's going to be a slow game. LaSalle's outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, Fordham 352nd, so semi-line 2.5, willing to lay a deuce here with Fordham, and I like the under, semi-total 126.5. 695, 696. Texas is on the road against Arkansas. Texas is back to being an underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. 165.5 is the total, and semi-line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, it's a Texas team that does have a nice edge with regards to the defensive glass or not allowing second and third chances. If you look at just defensive rebound percentage, teams are only grabbing about 24.2% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is 28th in the country. Arkansas is not that. This is an Arkansas group that is 283rd with allowing teams to grab about 30.7% other misses as an offensive rebound. And for Arkansas, overall, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are checking in about 198th in the country. They're not bad in terms of guarding the three-point arc. They've been well inside the top 100 with that respect. And I do think that Arkansas actually finds a way to get the job done here because their offense is just that good. They are number 1 in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. This Arkansas group shoots from three-point range 37.4% overall. That goes to 39.3% when they are at home. And if you look at just raw points scored on a per possession basis, this Arkansas group is Mambo number 5 in the country. That actually goes to number 1 in specifically their home games. And Texas has had a few struggles with regards to their offense this season. They are 11th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Goes down a little bit away from home, but you'd still like to see a little bit more of Tremont Mark, who's shooting a hair above 30% from three-point range. That means that you've had Jordan Pope take a little bit more ownership of the offense. 13 points per game. He shoots about 37% from 3. Now, Dalen Swain has been very versatile. 17 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists per game, and for Texas, this is a group that does an amazing job of getting to the free throw line. Top 15 group in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They also have the edge down low. Top 45 team with their own two-point shooting percentage. Top 70 team with regards to opponent's two-point shooting percentage. But I do think that Trevon Brazil has been versatile for Arkansas. 12.7 boards, shoots 34% from 3 is going to be able to produce. And then you've got Darius Acuff. He's the best player in this game. 22.6 assists. He shoots 43% from 3. Malik Thomas throws in there 15 points. He shoots 40% from three-point range. Arkansas has been solid at getting to the free throw line. They shoot 74.5% when they do get to the free throw line. With the way that they're able to lock things down from the outside, they are very bad on the inside, outside the top 265 with regards to bonus two-point shooting percentage, but their own two-point shooting percentage is in the top 40 as well. I do think that Arkansas finds a way to get the job done with their overall efficiency. I think that's going to be a higher scoring game, but I do think that perimeter defense of Arkansas does just enough to keep you under, and Texas a little bit more of a mid-tempo team to earn 10th in terms of total possessions per game. Arkansas obviously gunning it in terms of total possessions per game, 22nd, but made my total a 164.5, so 165 plus in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 here with Arkansas, 697, 698. Marquette is on the road against Providence. Providence anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5 point favorites, so on this game, 161.5 to 162.5. My line 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It is a Marquette team that's had some success in terms of generating turnovers, but it does very much go downward when they're away from home. Marquette, in terms of overall turnovers generated on a per possession basis, 58th in the country. In games played away from home, though, this is well outside the top 150, and you've got a Providence team that has been able to do a very nice job on offense. Marquette has not been able to. Marquette is currently 245th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This Providence group, right now, they are checking in 55th in the country. You've got Oswin down low, has been able to give you multiple blocks, 7 rebounds per game. Notice how I called him Oswin because I can't pronounce the last name, so I've learned with that, but you do have a pair of guys in the backcourt. Jalen Sellers, Jason Edwards, these two guys combined for about 35.6 points per game, and with Sellers, he's shooting 43.5% from 3, 86% of the free throw line. Jason Edwards shoots 79% of the free throw line, and then you've had Stephen Fox be able to step up. Only shoots about 34% from 3, but 84% of the free throw line, 15.5 points. He and Edwards both give you 3.2 assists per game. It is a Providence group that's just outside the top 160 with regards to ball security, and they're going to give up second and third chances, but guess what? This Marquette team, they are going to give up a lot of second and third chances as well. You look at both of these teams in terms of defensive rebounding, and they're both pretty awful. With Providence 168th in the country, allowing opponents grab about 28% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Marquette, they allow 32% of misses to become an offensive rebound. That's 321st in all of college basketball, and you're able to beat this Providence team by being able to go bombs away from 3. They allow opponents to shoot about 36% from the outside. That is well outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. Marquette not really hitting their threes right now. For Marquette, they shoot 31.7% from 3. They're just inside the top 3 with that regard. Nigel James has been solid, shooting 37.5% from 3, 16 points, 5 assists per contest, and then you've got none of your other top 4 scorers shooting above 31.5% from 3. You do have Chase Ross with his versatility, 14.5 points, 4 boards, 2.3 steals per game, but one guy in the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game is Ben Gold with 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's just been a big giant mess for Marquette. And let's say that they need to be able to cover this game at the free throw line. They shoot 67.1% at the free throw line. Just absolutely atrocious there against a Providence team that's very willing to foul. In Providence, they're looking to go to top 10 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Marquette at 73rd. So interesting ordeal here. I did set my total at a 165.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Providence, and I do like the over. 699, 700 on the card. Duquesne is on the road against Rhode Island. Rhode Island between a pick 'em to a 1.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 143.5, and with Rhode Island, set them as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I think that Rhode Island is just going to be able to do a good job on the turnover front, as they are 10th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, 62nd overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Duquesne, meanwhile, 250th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. It is a Duquesne defense that's neither here nor there, 177th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and both teams have struggled to be able to guard the arc. Duquesne, 241st in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Rhode Island, 259th. Their overall percentage for Rhode Island, 35.4%. That does go down to 31.9% in their home games, and that's big because this is a Rhode Island team that has been, for much of the year, outside the top 300 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Now that you have Jamari Tripp returning to the lineup, he's shooting 40% from 3, 12.5 points per game. That should elevate a little bit. Tyler Cochran has been Mr. Versatile, 14.5 points, 6 boards, 2.5 steals per contest. Jonah Hinton, he's hitting it hard with shooting 33% from 3, 13 points per game, and for this Rhode Island group, it has been one that has been able to do a pretty supreme job on the inside, as well as they've been a top 125 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 155 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, so do like to be able to see that. And then on the flip side for Duquesne, they've just dealt with a lot of injuries around their front court this season, mainly to the gentleman that began his career over at Pittsburgh and John Hughley. Even though he's back in the fold for the team, he's down to about 9 points, 4 rebounds per game. In conference play and conference play only, he's been pretty much an afterthought for the team. That means that Terrence Gunyard and Jimmy Williams, who combine for about 33 points per game between the two of them, shoot 37% per 3. They need to do a little bit of everything for the team. You've got Jacob Nisis, David Dixon, who both give you a combined 10.5 rebounds per game, and to the credit of Dixon, about a block and a half per contest, but it is a group that's now outside the top 140 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. For Duquesne, they do find themselves outside the top 140 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage as well. Pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers themselves, top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated underrated on a per possession basis, but they also are very willing to put you on the free throw line. They're outside the top 290 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. I think that allows a Rhode Island team that's been a little bit suspect with their shooting to get the job done. Set my line at 5. I'm willing to lay with Rhode Island. Duquesne is really looking to push tempo right now in terms of total possessions per game, 74th in the country, so set a total of a 145. So at the 143.5, I like the over. 7-1, 7-2. Cal is going to be on the road against Georgia Tech. The Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech is a 3.5 point home underdog. Total on this game 154 to 154.5, and I set my total 154.5. So 154 or less. My max buy point on the over is you've got a Georgia Tech team as I don't know why, but they're really looking to push tempo this year. 34th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They don't have the personnel to run tempo, but they're running tempo. And for Cal, more of a country average team, 111th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And it's a Cal team that, even though they're overall 139th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they've actually been much better when they've been away from home. In games played away from home, this team does go into the top 65 in terms of points per possession as they have shot it really well from three-point range away from home. 40.2%. That ranks Mambo number 5 in all of college basketball, and this Cal team has been able to do the little things well. They're a top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. If they need to cover this game at the free throw line, they shoot 79.2% at the charity stripe away from home. That's another top 15 mark in the country, and for Georgia Tech, they are not doing the little things well. They are outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Georgia Tech, if you send them to the free throw line, they are currently shooting a nice cool 70.2% while they're there. That is 256th in all of college basketball. Overall, this team is outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and what was a very solid team on defense to begin the season, they are now well outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, this is a Cal team that has had their issues on the glass as well, as Lee Dort has been the lone guy on the roster to give you over 5 rebounds per game, and he's right now dealing with an injury, so this team is 149th in the country with regards to defensive rebound percentage, and they're going to need to overcome the travel, but do have a guy in Data Ames who I think is going to be the best player in this game. 16.5 points, pair of assists, shoots 37% from 3. John Camden has been able to launch at 41% from the outside, 14 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Cal team that has been a little bit lackadaisical down low. They're outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for Georgia Tech, even though you've got the big men down low, like a Bay Ndongo, who's been able to give you 12 points, right around about 7 rebounds per game, this has been a much better 3-point shooting team than a 2-point shooting team. Like Georgia Tech is right now shooting 35.4% from 3. That's about 101st in all of college basketball. On the inside, these guys can execute to save their lives. 300th in the country in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. If you look at their home games and their home games only, this falls outside the top 320. It really makes no sense whatsoever. And for Georgia Tech, you do have Kwasi Reeves, who gives you 15 points, shoots 37.5% from 3. Ndongo, I mentioned before, he shoots 35.5% from 3. They've been dealing with the injury to Mohamed Salle. That's a big reason why their low post play has went into the abyss. You've got Lamar Washington, who does a bit of everything. 10 points, steal and a half, 5 boards, 4.5 assists per game, but he only shoots 29.5% from 3. But the overall sloppiness for Georgia Tech, I think, is going to be costly for Georgia Tech, also outside the top 135 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So they do think that Cal goes on the road, gets the job done here, sets them as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number in at a 154 or less. I'm in on the over. 703, 704. UAB is on the road against Charlotte. Charlotte is a home underdog of 1.5 to 2 points. 144.5 to 143.5 is the total. Semi-total 143.5. So 144 plus. I do like the under. You still have a Charlotte team has been playing at a very, very slow pace. In terms of total possessions per game, they are 329th in the country, even though their last game went to overtime. UAB has been gunning it, 51st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and with the UAB, they are going to have a big leg up in terms of taking care of the ball, and I think that that's going to be enough for them to be able to cover this game. This UAB team, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, they are 3rd in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Charlotte team that is squandering possessions, 273rd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That falls outside the top 295 in their home games. Now, you do have a Charlotte team that's been pretty solid with their 3-point shooting at 35.2%. That's a top 125 mark in the country, and they're a top 135 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage as well. Bradford has been able to give you 13 points, 3.5 boards, but doesn't really pop it from 3. Dezane Mingo, though, does a bit of everything. A steal, 4.5 assists, 12 points, shoots 38% from 3. The ancillary guys having good 3-point shooters. Samani Harrison shoots 42% from the outside, 9.5 points per game. Arden Coyers throws in their 7.5 points. He shoots about 37.5% from 3. And then Anton Bunke has been able to give you about 8 boards, 11 points, and at 7 feet tall, he's able to shoot about 31.5% from 3. And UAB, they do not shoot it well from 3-point range. This is a group that is shooting 28.4% from three. That is a bottom 10 mark in the country, but they're also a top 25 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the three-point line. And for UAB, they've done a great job in terms of being able to generate the rebound battle for the Charlotte team, while they do a nice job in terms of grabbing some second and third chances. 264th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. In games played at home, teams grab over 30.4% of their misses as an offensive rebound, outside the top 285 there. Meanwhile, UAB, in games played away from home, teams are only grabbing 24.6% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a top 35 mark in the country, and they come up with some nice second and third chances themselves. Top 135 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Chance Westry has led the charge with about 15 points, 5 assists, 4 boards per contest. Daniel Rivera, Kyron Lindsay, a combined 11 boards, about 22.5 points per game out of those two guys. Jacob Meyer throws in their 13 points. UAB at the free throw line, they do shoot just 70% of the free throw line, but that said, I do think that they take it to a Charlotte team that's been outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I think that the low amount of possessions and the fact that UAB doesn't shoot threes keeps the under semi-total 143.5, but with the UAB made them the 3.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay it. 7-5, 7-6, St. Joe's, they hope to not be average Joe's. They are on the road against Davidson, and Davidson does find themselves as a 3.5 to a 4 point favorite. 137.5 to 138.5 is the total. I like the under. I did semi-total at a 135. Davidson is one of the most ridiculously slow teams in all of college basketball. 353rd in terms of total possessions per game. St. Joe's very mid-tempo team. 194th in terms of total possessions per game. St. Joe's in games played away from home have been able to find themselves some nice second and third chances. They rebound 31.1% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That is a top 70 mark in the country, and they've been able to do a great job in terms of being able to guard down low, as you've got a guy in Justice Agelbor who's one of the more underrated shot blockers in all of college basketball. Right now, he only gives you about 5.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest, but throws in their 2.3 blocks per game for a team that is in the top 25 in the country with regards to shot block percentage. They're a top 35 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they've actually done a better job in terms of guarding the outside as well. Teams are shooting less than 32% from three-point against them, and for St. Joe's, they need to guard the three well, because they face off against a Davidson team that is 37th in the country with their own 3-point shooting percentage at 36.8%, and St. Joe's, they're just not shooting threes well. They shoot 30% from three. That is 343rd in all of college basketball, and St. Joe's overall just 262nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That is a big reason why I'm in on the under. I just can't trust the St. Joe's team, even with Jaden Glover, give you 15.5 points, shoots about 34.5% from three-point. They have been outside the top 200 in terms of ball security. St. Joe's not the world's worst team on the inside, top 185 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. Just your Haskins gives you about 6 boards, 11.5 points per game. But on the flip side for Davidson, you've got a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with Robert Blums becoming the top scorer. He supplies the team with about 12 points, shoots 42% from three-point shot. We'll say if Davidson is in a pressure spot, even though they shoot as well as they do from three, they shoot 66.3% of the free throw line on a team where nobody grabs more than 4.1 rebounds per game. Riddle me that, but that said, you do have Ian Plateau, who's been able to give you some versatility with about 4 boards, a pair of assists. Josh Govins throws in there 11 points, 4 boards, and then you get some pretty good 3-point shooting out of Parker Fredrickson at 44%. He gives the team about 10.5 points per game, and Davidson has been a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. It's a Davidson team that, even though they don't grab for themselves second and third chances in terms of offensive rebound percentage, this team is checking in just here outside the top 200 in all of college basketball. Haven't been the world's worst team in terms of disallowing second and third chances as well. They do find themselves allowing teams to grab about 25% of their misses as an offensive rebound at home. That is in the top 150 in all of college basketball. And I do think that the overall backcourt play of Davidson is going to help them find a way to be able to just barely get the job done here. Set by total 135. I do like the under, and with Davidson, I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 with them. 707, 708. You've got Miami on the road against SMU, and SMU a slim favorite here of 1 to 1.5 points. Totals between 160.5 to 161.5. I like the over. I set my total at 164.5. This SMU team is absolutely gunning it, 36th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Miami's playing quite fast as well, 129th in terms of total possessions per game. And if you look at the overall Miami defense, it's been rock solid. They don't allow second and third chances, 12th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, with teams only grabbing about 23% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. You take a look at the overall points allowed on a per possession basis. That mark is about 33rd in the country, but they do give it up away from home. This is a Miami team that in a roadside-shoot score venue, 296th in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage at 37.2%. SMU, they bomb it from three, 37.3%. That is 22nd in the country, and I think that that's going to allow this team to be able to get the job done. I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Kevin Miller. I refuse to call him boopy, but he does boop teams with about 19 points, shoots 41.5% from three-point. BJ Edwards, Jerron Pierre, they both shoot about 37.2% from three. Between the two of them, you're getting about 31 points per game, and Edwards just does a little bit of everything everything. 6 boards, 5 assists, 2.3 steals per contest. Now, it's an SMU defense that they themselves are about 172nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're getting it taken to them down low. They're outside the top 185 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but Samat Yedoglu, double-figure scores, able to give you about 8 rebounds per game. I think that he's going to do an okay job of providing a speed bump to Malika Renu, who's been so versatile for Miami. 19 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 35% from 3 in Miami. Also really good in terms of grabbing second and third chances. Top 35 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. They've been good on the inside. Top 30 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Country average with their 34.1% 3-point shooting, but also if they're in a pressure spot, Miami, they shoot 67.6% at the free throw line. That is well outside the top 325 in all of college basketball. And you do have Ernest Uday, who's been able to do a nice job down low, blocking 9.5 rebounds, 7 points per game. But again, not a guy that you want getting just fouled and going to the free throw line. Drew Washington, 12 points. He shoots 36% from 3. Trey Donaldson, 16.5 points, 6 assists per contest. But it is a Miami team that they can get a little bit sloppy with the ball outside the top 140. In terms of ball security, they themselves have been right around about 100th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But I think that SMU going to be launching from the outside. I think that they're going to have success with it and get the job done. So my line at 6.5. I'm willing to lay with SMU, and I like the over. Semi-total 164.5, 709, 710. You've got George Washington, and they are going to be playing host to St. Bonaventure, and the Bonnies do find themselves as an 8 to an 8.5 point underdog. 159.5 to 160 is the total. Semi-total 156.5. I like the under. Now for St. Bonaventure, the defense has taken many strides back from past years. 462nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They actually give up fewer points per possession away from home rather than at home. That goes down to 158th in a road/huge square venue. They're 227th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For their standards, that's fast. Overall, in terms of the nation, that's still slightly below country average. And it's a Bonaventure team that's been pretty solid on offense. They do rank in the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Their real strength has been 3-point shooting. It's a St. Bonaventure team that overall is 26th in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage at 37.6%. Actually goes up to 38.2% in a road/huge square venue. Meanwhile, you've got a George Washington team that's been much better on defense when they've been at home rather than away from home. Overall, 138th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but that goes to 52nd in the country when they are at home, and they have been able to do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers at home. 47th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and with this George Washington team, they've actually seen a little bit of a dive with their own 3-point shooting percentage at home. 34.1% at home, 37% in a road/huge square venue, but now they do have Rafael Castro back, who he was dealing with an injury for about 6 games. He's been able to give you 16 points, pair of steals, block and per contest, all sorts of versatile. Doesn't really shoot it from 3, but on the defensive side of things, he's a maestro of a bit of everything. Trey Dinkins, 9.5 points, pair of assists. He's been really one of the sharpshooters at 40%. Trey Autry shoots 39% from 3, 11 points per game, and it's a George Washington team that it's been neither here nor there with their 3-point shooting defense. So right around about 150th with opponents shooting 33.3% from the outside. They're much weaker on the inside, but they're also stronger on offense on the inside. They're a top 45 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Bonaventure, you've got a guy that's giving you darn near a double-double night in and night out in Frank Mitchell, 16.2 points, 10 boards, about 3 assists, steal and per contest. So he's been much like Castro has been on the flip side for George Washington. Meanwhile, Daryl Simmons, he's your top scorer, shooting 43% from 3, 16.5 points per contest. Daniel Igbeniwe, 39% 3-point shooter, 8 points per game. And with Bonaventure, they've had a little bit of a tough time taking care of the ball outside the top 150 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and this has been a team that's had a little bit of a tough time executing down low as well. They're outside the top 240 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 200 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they don't get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 300 in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. Now, I do think that with George Washington seeing a bit of a dive with their 3-point shooting at home and Bonaventure being a bit better on defense away from home, that it becomes tight here. I did set my line at 8.5. Right now I'm seeing between 8 to 8.5. I was seeing before a few 9s. This was an opening number in some places at a 9. Personally, between an 8 to a 9, I would rather take a 9 rather than lay 8. But if I had to bet this right now as I'm doing this podcast, I'm right now seeing 8 to 8.5. Would be willing to lay 8 here with George Washington to go along with that under semi-total at a 156.5. 7-11, 7-12, the Ohio State University on the road against Penn State. Penn State is a 6.5 to a 7.5 point home underdog. Total on this game, 153.5 to 154.5, and I do like the under. I set my total at 152.5. Penn State is playing much more slowly this year than they have in the past. 269th in terms of total possessions per game. We've noticed Iowa State slowing down as well. 243rd in terms of total possessions per game. And it's a Penn State team that, man, they have not played any defense whatsoever. 344th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's a bit better at home. They are giving up 13.4 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. Iowa State has been pretty ghastly themselves. 167th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But I think that getting back John Mobley is just so supreme for this team. That's why I said Ohio State is an 8.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, Ohio State away from home, they're shooting just 31.8% from three compared to 36.7% at home. Part of that is Mobley was missing for a lot of those road games, and now you get him back, being able to spy you with about 15.5 points. Shoots 41% from three. That's an X factor. Bruce Thornton, he's the best overall scorer in this game. 20 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, and for Iowa State, they're still doing a great job down low. They're a top 35 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they guard the arc themselves. So Iowa State is allowing you to shoot only about 31% from three. That is a top 36 mark in all of college basketball. And for Penn State, they just don't really have a ton down low. They are a top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, but other than Ivan Jurcic, who's been able to give you about 5.2 or so rebounds per game, nobody else on the roster really gives you above 4 boards per contest. Freddie De Leon, 14 points, 3.5 boards. You've got Caden Mingo, who's been able to do a bit of everything in the backcourt. Throws in their 2 steals, about 4.5 assists, 13.5 points. He does shoot just 23% from three. And Penn State, they're not even a good 3-point shooting team at 32.4%. They're outside the top 240 with that regard, and Penn State has been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and in specifically their home games, they've been able to generate some turnovers. Penn State overall for the season is about 98th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Look at home games and home games only. That does ascend into the top 60 in all of college basketball, but that said, with this Ohio State team doing as good of a job as they are on the inside, and Penn State is a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, I think that Ohio State finds a way to get the job done, though I do think that there's going to be a few more turnovers and a little bit of a slowdown. Semi-total 152.5, like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Ohio State. 7-13, 7-14, Villanova is on the road against DePaul. DePaul is a home underdog of 3.5 points total on this game, 135.5, and DePaul's actually been a really good cover team this year. I'm going to go against them, though. I like Villanova here. I set them as a 7.5 point favorite. It's a DePaul group that at this point is pretty much based completely on defense. They've been a top 75 team on defense in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are 51st in the country, and in their home games specifically, that climbs a little bit downward to about 53rd, 54th, but overall, they've been solid there. They just don't have a lot of offense, so this is a Villanova team that's 69th in terms of points per possession, 69th in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. DePaul is 248th with points per possession, 252nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They only shoot about 33% from 3-point range, and they just don't have the weapons to be able to match up down low as well. As for Villanova, they're going to have the best big man in this game. Duke Brandon has been able to give you a little bit over 12 points, right around about 10.5 rebounds per game, and Heather Perkins has had great versatility, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots about 35.5% from three. Bryce Lindsey has seen a drop-off with his scoring, but as he's been seeing a little bit of a dip there, you've had Arcaden Lewis step up to be able to give you 12.5 points, 5 assists per contest. Now, it is a Villanova team that they're not necessarily doing the little things great. They are shooting 68.7% of the free throw line. That's outside the top 260 in all of college basketball, and they have been outside the top 150 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so a little bit of caution there, but for DePaul, you really don't have that go-to scorer. CJ Gunn is right now your top guy with 13.5 points, shoots about 34.5% from three, and then Landon Blocker is more of your main facilitator, 11 points, 3.5 assists per game, but I mean, right now your top 3-point shooter has to be Caleb Banks at about 35% from the outside. You do have Theo Pierre-Justin, who's been able to shoot about 41% from three, but on very, very low volume. He only gives you about 4 points per game. It's a DePaul team that has been outside the top 175 with regards to rebound percentage, and they're absolutely getting lambasted from three. They're allowing teams to shoot 35.9% for three. They are outside the top 260 in all of college basketball, and this is a Villanova team that, while they're not necessarily like the world's greatest team on the inside, they're a team that can hurt you from 3-point range. Villanova right now shooting about 35.5% from three. That's a top 100 mark in all of college basketball. I do think that Villanova against a DePaul team that just really hasn't gotten it going on offense is going to be able to get it done in what should be a relative slog of a game. Villanova 262nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. DePaul 250th, so made a total of 132.5. I like the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 70 here with Villanova. 7-15, 7-16. Maryland is on the road against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin double-figure favorites of 13.5 to 14.5 points. So it's game 153.5, and with Wisconsin, made them a 16.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Maryland team that's just been a mess all season long. They're about 300th in the country with their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They shoot 30.4% from 3-point range in games played away from them. They've been a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, but also defensively, they're 304th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That's a big, giant issue, and you've got a Wisconsin team that they very much love to take threes. Over 50% of their field goal attempts come from three. That is a top 25 mark in the country, and it's a Maryland team that is allowing teams to shoot 37% from three. That is 339th in all of college basketball. That is doomsday right there, and while Maryland has a nice go-to rebounder in Solomon Washington, he's been able to give you about 9 to 10 points per game. He throws in their 9 boards per contest. It's still a team that's very much outgunned down low because right now he's pretty much the only healthy player that gives you over 4.4 rebounds per game, and you've got Nolan Winter for Wisconsin give you 8+ rebounds. Wisconsin a top 65 team with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Now you do have double D for this team, as you've had Darius Adams along with David Hewitt, who both been able to step up, combine for, and then neighbored about 25 points per game. And Hewitt does shoot 35% from three. Adams, shoots about 25% from three. And for this Wisconsin group, I do think that they're going to be able to find a lot of good looks from 3-point range. You've got Nick Boyd, John Blackwell, who have combined for 38.5 points per game between the two of them. They shoot about 36% from three. Allison Rapp is out to give you 9 points, 4 boards out with a little bit of injury. They've got him back. Andrew Rohde gives you about 3 assists per game for a Wisconsin team that they just continue to do the little things well. Top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They shoot 77.7% on the free throw line. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. When they need to go inside, they're a top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. And Wisconsin, I think, is going to be able to go out there just dominate this game. I just don't know if Maryland's going to be able to do their part with this total. In terms of total possessions per game, they slowed down to about 241st in terms of total possessions per game. Wisconsin, about 108th in terms of total possessions per game. Set a total of a 152.5. So 153 plus, I like the under, and I'm willing to lay it with Wisconsin. Made them a 16.5 point favorite. 7-17, 7-18, or Rice. We give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They're on the road against North Texas. North Texas, 7.5 to 8-point favorites. So this game 139.5 to 140.5, and with Rice, I did set them as an underdog of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 7+. As right now, it's very, very rough for both of these teams on offense. North Texas about 294th in the country in terms of points per possession. Rice 254th in terms of points per possession, though you do have a North Texas team that's been really good defensively. They're a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 10 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're allowing teams to shoot less than 31.5% from three. That's a top 40 mark as well on Rice. They are 284th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you've also got a North Texas team that from 3-point range right now, they are hitting at a nice hearty clip of 29.1%. That is 354th in all of college basketball. And let's say that you get into a little bit of a pressure spot and you need free throws to be able to cover the spread. North Texas, they only shoot about 69.2% of the free throw line at home. That is outside the top 260 in all of college basketball. Now, for Rice, they're not executing inside. They're outside the top 340 with their 2-point shooting percentage, and that's a big reason why I like the under. I did some I told you at a 132.5, but you do have a few guys in the backcourt that have played with one another for a few years. Jalen Smith, he came on over from SMU along with his coach Rob Lanier. 12 points, shoots 37% from 3-point. Chick Anderson up to 39% 3-point shooting, 15.5 points. Throws in there 4.5 boards. Trey Barneau, he's able to give you 16 points, 5 rebounds, and I will say this, for North Texas, they're outside the top 265 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and this Rice team has given themselves second and third chances. 54th in the country in terms of percent of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. To the crowd of North Texas, they're 47. So both of these teams pretty equal in terms of being able to grab second and third chances. Jimmy Oldacon has been able to come in there, give you about 5 rebounds per game for Rice, and then on the flip side for North Texas, it's become the team of Jashawn Stevenson, who's been your top scorer. He's been able to go out there, give you about 17 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, but he only shoots right around about 31% for three, which is above the team average right now, which is rough. You've got David Terrell, who's been able to give you 13.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. It's a North Texas team just a hair outside the top 200 with regards to own ball security. You've had Cole Franklin step up a little bit with about 6 points, 4.5 boards, but he only shoots about 25.5% from three. It's a North Texas team that has just not been taking a lot of threes, but even when they go inside, they're outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. I think that you get a slog of the game, and I think that allows Rice to be able to hold in this one. So I did set my line at a 6.5, 7+. We'll take the points with Rice. Go Owls, and I like the under. Semi-total 132.5, 719, 720. Loyal Chicago is going to be on the road against St. Louis. St. Louis, a Mondo-size favorite here. You are laying 24 to 24.5 points with them. So on this game, 155.5. set my line at 27. I saw a very initial opener of 27.5. This got pile driven down to 24.5, but I'm now willing to lay it with St. Louis. This is a St. Louis team that I know that they have gone through a little bit of, shall we say, tough times here over the last week or so, but this is still one of the best teams in terms of both offense and defense in all of college basketball. St. Louis is 10th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're a top 15 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This team just absolutely goes bombs away from three-point range as well, 41.4%. That is numero uno in all of college basketball, and this is a loyal Chicago team that's not going to put you under any sort of duress whatsoever. What I found with St. Louis is that their kryptonite is turnovers. They're outside the top 150 in terms of ball security. Loyal Chicago, they're a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per game basis, and it's a loyal Chicago team that line teams to shoot 37.6% from three. That is a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball. Really, the lone saving grace for loyal Chicago has been Miles Rubin down low. He's been solid, give you about 11.7 boards, multiple blocks per contest, but what are you going to be able to get outside of that? Caden Dodson has been able to give you about 9.5 points. You said, okay, from three-point, Justin Moore, he tries to give you more, but he's down to with injury. That's your main point guard, so that causes a lot of dysfunction with this offense. DeWilk Tavares has been up, down, all around, 9 points per game. Does shoot 88% of the free throw line, which, considering the team shoots 66.8% at the free throw line, they need a little bit more of that, but he's only been able to shoot 32% from three. Loyal Chicago, they're outside the top 300 with their own three-point shooting percentage, and that's supposed to be one of their fortes. So it's really just a lot of dysfunction with this team, to say the least. And then for St. Louis, everyone thinks of Robbie Avila along with Josh Schertz, and rightfully so. Avila is your top scorer, 13 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, but this is a deep team. You've got 8 different guys give you over 7 points per contest. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 5.7 rebounds per game. Deion Brown is actually your top rebounder with 11 points, 5.7 boards, shoots 37% from three, but it is a team that still ranks in the top 35 with regards to overall rebound percentage. Just so many guys hitting threes. Trey Green shoots 46% from three with about 11.5 points per contest. Avila shoots 43% from three. Ishan Sharma shoots 44% from the outside. Brady Dunlap shoots 44.5% from three. I think that St. Louis goes out there, just completely dominates a very, very sad and pathetic loyal Chicago team. So I'm willing to lay it. I set my line at 27, and I did set a total here of a 155 right now. We're seeing this at about a 155.5. Keep in mind, loyal Chicago, still a low-tempo team, 302nd in terms of total possessions per game. So 155 plus in on the under, and willing to lay with St. Louis. 721, 722. Purdue is going to be on there against Northwestern. Northwestern home underdogs of 9.5 to 10.5 points. Still on this game, 146.5 to 147.5. I made a line of 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with this Northwestern team. They've actually been pretty solid in terms of guarding the three-point line. They're a top 110 team. The line teams that shoot about 32.8% from three-point. And Purdue, they're line teams that shoot 33.2% from the outside. That goes down to 31.4% away from home. And it's an interesting Purdue defense because they've been outside the top 210 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but they've been a little bit better away from home rather than at home. Overall for the season, they're hovering right around about 113th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but in a road/neutral court venue, that does go into the top 40 in all of college basketball. And for Northwestern, has been a team that you'd expected a little bit more from. They're about 178th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I think the fact that they just keep things clean is going to be able to keep them in this game. They are 5th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got perhaps the best overall scorer in this game. I'm not going to say best player, but the best overall scorer, Nick Martinelli, who's been able to give you 22.5 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 40+% from three, and boy, do they need it, because Northwestern, they shoot 32.3% from three, 265th in the country, although that does go up to about 34.6% in their home games. And with Purdue, you do have that two-headed monster in Fletcher Lawyer along with Braden Smith in the backcourt. They've been able to combine for 28.5 points per game. Both shoot 40+% from three. You've got both guys shooting over 80.5% of the free throw line. Smith throws in their 8.7 assists, about 2 steals per contest. In Purdue, obviously, they do a nice job keeping things clean. Top 5 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they should be able to dominate down low. Trey Kaufman, Ren, Oscar Clough, they combine for about 16 rebounds per game. But again, they are giving up those open looks on the inside. It's a Northwestern team that they have not been able to give themselves a lot of second and third chances in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They're outside the top 275 in all of college basketball, and as a matter of fact, they're just outside the top 250 in terms of overall rebound percentage. But you do have Trey Singleton, who throws in their 5 boards, 8 points per game. Arrington Page, 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And with Northwestern being able to guard the arc the way that they do, they're able to create a little bit of bother with regards to that backcourt. I do think that they're going to remain lively in this game against a Purdue team that has just been a bit dysfunctional recently. So, semi-line and 8.5. Won't take 9+ here with Northwestern. Northwestern. And with my total, I set mine at a 146.5. So at a 147 plus, I'm going to be in on the under. 723, 724. It's Stanford on the road against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is a 1-1.5 point favorite. 145.5 is the total. I set my total 137.5. I'm in on the under. Keep in mind, when these two teams played the first time around, it was one of the biggest slugs that you are ever going to see. 47-40. Like, good grief. 47-40. There are first half scores that are higher than that. Now, do I think we're going to get 47-40? No. I think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring than that, but I mean, these are two teams that have been a little bit rough with their offense. They're both outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. With the Stanford group, they've been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers. Top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Notre Dame in their home games specifically, 302nd in terms of turnovers per possession, and you've got your top two scorers in terms of points per game, Marcus Burton along Jalen Harrelson, currently dealing with injury, so that means that Cole Kurta, Brandon Shrewsbury, who they do combine to shoot about 40% from three-point range, combined for about 27 to 28 points per game. They're going to need to step up in a big way, but they're not necessarily primary ball handlers. Meanwhile, for Stanford, in my opinion, you got the best player out there on the floor, Buka Okore, 22.7 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, stealing per contest, up to about 34% three-point shooting in conference play. He's been shooting a little bit above that as well. You've got Benny Gieler, who's been able to Gieler done, shooting 42% from the outside, 11.5 points per game. Do have to give Notre Dame a little bit of credit, the fact that they shoot much better from three-point range at home rather than away from home. 31.2% away from home, 39.1% in their home games, and it is a Stanford team that overall they've been shooting from three-point range about 34.9%, and that's the same home and road, so they don't necessarily have big splits there. It's a Stanford group as well that has been able to do an okay job in terms of not allowing second and third chances, and they've actually pulled in there a lot of second and third chances in their games played specifically away from home. In games played away from home, they pull in there about 31.5% of their misses. As an offensive rebound, that's the top 75 mark in the country, and for Stanford, you do have a little bit of size on this roster. You've been able to have A.J. Rossi be able to give you about 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and to the credit of Notre Dame, top 25 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They do not allow a lot of second and third chances, thanks to Carson Tout, comes over from Northern Arizona, only gives you about 6 points per game, but 9.3 rebounds, but outside of Kurta and Shrewsbury, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's healthy right now, give you over 6.1 points per game. You're going to need guys like Sir Muhammad and company to be able to step up, and if Notre Dame's in a pressure spot, they only shoot 68.8% at the free throw line. They've also been outside the top 240 with opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 175 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. You got a Notre Dame team that's really not looking to push a ton of tempo, and Stanford, they're about 212th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Notre Dame 242nd, so I do think that this is going to be a bit of a slog game, not quite what we saw the first time around, but I do think that Stanford gets their revenge here. I set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I like Stanford on the money line, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 137.5. 725, 726. Baylor is on the road against Houston, and Houston is a double-figure favorite as you're laying between 14.5 to 15.5 with them. 142.5 to 143.5 is the total, and I did set my line at 14. I'm going to be willing to take 14.5 plus with Baylor. I really do think that bringing in James Nanji just threw things completely out of sorts for Baylor. They've looked a little bit more respectable here recently. I know that they lose that game to Arizona, but they put forth a spirited effort. They win that game against Central Florida, so things seem to be getting back online because this has been a team that has been good in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Top 25 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Houston has been dominant here as well. They are 24th in the country in terms of percentage of their misses that result in an offensive rebound. So I do think that you're going to get a lot of second and third chances on the glass because Baylor gives them up, and surprisingly, Houston is about 127th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing teams to grab over 27% of their misses as an offensive rebound. Far worse with Baylor, 272nd, and this is the Baylor defense that overall for the season is outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They still have found a way to get points up on the board, though. 60th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. It is a Houston group that is not necessarily the world's greatest shooting team as well. So Cameron Carp, he shoots 38% from three, 19 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Isaac Williams shoots 47.5% from three, 10.5 points per game. Bobby Edgem has been able to give you about 11 points per contest. Think that there's some success to be had. Now, with what Houston does, they do an incredible job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Again, they're outside the top 140 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but they do bid their free throws. 77.6% of the charity stripe. That's the top 30 mark with your top two scorers, Emmanuel Sharp, Kingston Flemings, both shooting over 84.5% of the free throw line. These two guys combined for a little bit over 33 points per game. Both shoot 37.5 to 38% from three-point range. Milo Zuzan overall for the season shoots 35.5% for three. In conference play, that has ascended to about 43.5% from the outside. He supplies about 11.5 points, 4 assists per game, and as we know with Houston, this is a very dominant defense. They've been at top top 50 team with opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 30 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but those second and third chances, I do think they're going to be able to keep Baylor lively, and this is going to be probably a slow down game. As Houston, they always like to be able to slow things down to a crawl. 327th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Baylor overall is 120th in terms of total possessions per game. Since conference play has started, though, they've been well outside the top 170, so I do think they get a little bit of a lower scoring game. Semi total at a 142. I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points here with Baylor, 727, 728. You've got Florida State on the road against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a 1.5 home underdog, so it's between 145.5 to a 146.5, and I do like Pittsburgh here on the money line. I did set them as a 2-point favorite, mainly because Florida State is a team that they love to hoist away from three-point range. Over 50% of their field goal attempts come from three, and Florida State, they shoot 31.7% from three. That is 293rd in the country. Pittsburgh is not necessarily the world's greatest shooting team themselves, but they shoot closer to 34.9% from three-point at home, overall 33.7%. That's a country average mark, and for Florida State, this is a team that's very much trying to gamble for turnovers. They're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they're going to be at a disadvantage on the glass as you got a Pittsburgh team that's 88th in the country in terms of percent of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Florida State well outside the top 200 with that regard, and it's a Pittsburgh team that hasn't been awful in terms of taking care of the ball. They're about 234th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. You got a Florida State team that they're hovering more around about 93rd, so Florida State has been able to do a good job in terms of winning that turnover battle. You've had Chauncey Wiggins at 6'10" be able to lend some nice versatility as he throws in their double figures. He's been one of your top 3-point shooters in that neighborhood, about 34 to 35% from the outside, and then Robert McCray gives you 15.5 points, 6 assists, shoots 34% from three, but these are really like the lone two guys on the roster that shoot above 34% from 3-point. Laje Jones has been able to give you about 12 points per game. He throws in their 6 boards, and then Alex Seen gives you 5.7 rebounds per game. These are the lone two guys on the roster of a team that is in the top 25 in terms of total possessions per game, give you over 4 rebounds per game. So Cam Corn, the former Florida State Seminole, gives you 13.7 boards, should be at an edge there. You've got Brady Cummings, give you about 12.5 points per game. Now, if you do have trepidation with taking Pittsburgh in a tight game, they shoot 66.8% of the free throw line. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. But that said, it is a Florida State team that, even though they have been able to do a nice job in terms of generating some turnovers, they've been a little bit vulnerable from the outside. 215th in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Pittsburgh, the airline teams to shoot 34.3% from the outside. That's about 199th in the country. So I do think that you get enough made threes for the over, but I think that DeMarco Minor is also going to be major in this game. He just does a little bit of everything for this team, right around about 9 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Siona Apricata shoots 35% from three. So with Pittsburgh, made them the 2-point favorite. I like them on the money line, and I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over as well. 729, 730. You got New Mexico playing outside Colorado State, and Colorado State does find themselves as a pretty good size underdog here, and they're anywhere between 7.5 to 8-point underdogs. It's also between 150 to 150.5. Semi-total here to 145. I like the under. Colorado State, though they've been very efficient on offense, top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 362nd in terms of total possessions per game. Super duper slow. You've got a New Mexico team that has been neither here nor there, 122nd in terms of total possessions per game. It's a New Mexico team that's not going to fight for a lot of second and third chances, 199th in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Colorado State, they're about 153rd, and it's a Colorado State team that their forte is their 3-point shooting, as this team is a top 15 team in the country. As a matter of fact, 7th in the country, shooting 39.5% from the outside. Really doesn't take a dive away from home at about 39.4%. Now, New Mexico, they've been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and Colorado State outside the top 265 in terms of ball security. And Colorado State has been rough with their defense, 290th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You have a New Mexico team that is 37th, with the forte of New Mexico really being the fact that they do a great job in terms of guarding the 3-point line. Teams are shooting just 29.6% from 3-pointers against them. That is the 11th in all of college basketball, and that's a big reason why I did set them as a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it because I do think that the overall versatility that you get out of Jake Hall is going to be paramount in this game as well. 16 points. He, from 3-point, shoots about 44.5% from the outside, nearly a steal per contest. And then you've been able to get a combined 2.5 steals, 22 points per game out of Dayton Aubrey, along with Uriah Tente, and then Tomislav Bujan throws in their 12 points, 10 boards. So he's really been a dominator down low for New Mexico, even though they don't grab a lot of second and third chances. They've been a top 125 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. It's a New Mexico team that could be had a little bit more on the inside. They're just outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. But again, it's a Colorado State team that they're looking to take a lot of threes. Now, when they do go inside, they've been a top 35 team with their 2-point shooting percentage as well. Brandon Rensteiner, Kyle Jorgensen combined for 24 points per game. They combined to shoot 42% for three. Josh Passarelli, 42% three-point shooter, 10.5 points per game. Kerry Booth shoots 40% for three, 5.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. And then Javon Muniz as a 6'6", a little bit of point forward, 4 boards, 5 assists, 7 points per game, shoots 37.5% from three, but with the way that New Mexico guards the three-point line and the way that Ohio State is a little bit sloppy with the ball, I do think that New Mexico finds a way to get the job done in a slow-down game. Semi-total 145, I like the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 8.5 here with New Mexico. 731, 732, USC is going to be on the road against Washington. Washington is a 5.5 to a 6.5 point favorite, mostly seeing 6.5. Total on this game is 151.5 to 152.5. My initial line was 3, but I had to factor in the fact that Chad Baker-Mazara is no longer with USC. I set my line at 6. I am willing to take 6.5 with USC. I've been hurt by this USC team before, so I might be once again, but I do think that they're going to be looking to go a little bit more down low, and they're going to be utilizing their bigs more. Gabe Dines has been a nice shot blocker, and he's a guy that can do a really nice job in terms of giving the team just a little bit more, shall we say, rough and tumble if they want to slow things down, because I feel like USC has been playing a little bit too fast for their own good. In terms of total possessions per game, this USC team is 32nd in the country. Washington, much more of a mid-tempo team. Washington, in terms of total possessions per game, they're checking in more around about 218th in the country. Washington has been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a Washington group that allows teams to shoot about 33.2% from the outside. That's the top 135 mark in the country. And for USC, you just don't have a ton of three-point shooting anymore with having Roddy Rice and Chad Baker-Mazara. The full Jordan Marsh, who shoots 37.5% from three, is probably your top scorer. And you've got Cam Woods, who does a nice job in terms of doling out the ball. 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, so he does a nice job slashing to the rim, but you just don't really have a lot of three-point shooting, so you need to, in my opinion, lean on Jake Kofi. He's been able to give you 9.5 points, 7 boards, block and half per contest. Ezra Usar, who's been able to give you 6 rebounds per game, and I would expect USC to slow down a little bit more as a result and start taking fewer threes, even though Elijah Arenas, I don't know if he's ever seen a shot that he doesn't like. Meanwhile, for Washington, Hans Steinbeck, he's going to be the best player in this game, 18 points, 11 boards. He's a future first-round pick at the very minimum, stealing a block per contest, shoots 33% from three, but Washington also doesn't shoot it well from three. 31.5% from the outside. They're outside the top 275 with that regard. Not even the world's greatest team on the inside. They're outside the top 125 with their 2-point shooting percentage. To their credit, top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but also won't put you under duress. They are outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and with USC in a lot of transition, no longer having out there Chad Baker-Mazara, a guy who had the ball in his hands quite a bit. I think that that's just enough for this team to be able to hold in there and to be able to remain lively. So I did set my total at a 148. I am going to be willing to take the points here with USC at a 6.5 plus, and I'm in on the under. Set my total 148. Next 2 games are from Pensacola, Florida, 733, 734. You've got Louisiana on the road against James Madison. Currently no numbers up on this game because Louisiana had to win to be able to get to this game, but I've got my handicap. I made James Madison a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 with them. 8 or more. Going to take the points with Louisiana. Set a total of a 132.5. So 132 or less in on the over, 133 or higher the under. You got a Louisiana team that is incredibly slow tempo in terms of total possessions per game. Entering into yesterday, they were hovering right around about 360th in all of college basketball. James Madison now looking to push tempo. They're about 257th in terms of total possessions per game, but it is a James Madison team that has been a top 100 team with both their own 3-point shooting percentage and opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Louisiana team that they're getting absolutely line-based from the outside right now. They're allowing teams to shoot about 36% from 3. That goes to 37.3% in a road/court venue. Now Louisiana having to play on a back-to-back. They don't really play at a ridiculous tempo, though, so that's not going to take a ton out of them. They don't necessarily have the, shall we say, deepest rotation, though. Dorian Finster, Jackson Oliveira, these are 2 guys that combine for about 26.5 points per game, and Finster shoots 37% from 3. The 3-point shooting has been able to come along for the ride for this team, but they're going to need to try to win this game with being able to take care of the ball, and they should be able to do so here. James Madison is a bottom 15 team in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Louisiana, more of a country average team. Louisiana, though, will put you on the free throw line. They're a top 30 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and James Madison, not necessarily an amazing free throw shooting team at 70.5%. That's right around about 250th in the country, but they've been a top 125 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, your own 2-point shooting percentage, more around about 200th, but you've got a trio of double-figure scores. Bradley Douglas, 11.5 points, shoots 36% from 3. Cliff Davis, 38.5% three-point shooter with 15.3 points per game. And then Justin McBride, 5.5 boards, 15 points, shoots 41% from three. James Madison, not necessarily doing a great job on the glass. They're outside the top 150 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So Louisiana doesn't necessarily pull in there a lot of second and third chances. They should be able to get a few here, but Eddie Ricks will be able to give you about 7.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. And I do think that this is going to be close enough for late fouling in a little bit of a tighter, slower game. So I set my line at 7.5, willing to lay up to 7 with James Madison. 8 or more taking the points with Louisiana, 132 or less, in on the over, 133 or higher the under, 735 to 736. Old Dominion on the road / at Pensacola, Florida against Georgia Southern. Again, no numbers up on this game, but made Georgia Southern the 3-point favorite, willing to lay up to 2.5 with them, 3.5 or more taking the points with Old Dominion. Then 156.5 or less, in on the over, 157 or higher the under. And with Georgia Southern, this is a team that's looking to play at a very aggressive pace. In terms of total possessions per game, they are currently in the top 25 in all of college basketball. Old Dominion is 78th, and for Old Dominion, they did a nice job taking it to a Louisiana Monroe team that right now is just absolutely terrible. But for Old Dominion, they're not going to give you a lot of second and third chances outside the top 320 in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Now, you have to like what you're getting out of Casey Shaw. He's been able to spy about 17 points, 4 boards, pair of assists per contest. It's an Old Dominion team that also has been a top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They're just not doing a great job down low. Caleb Sweat and Roger, it's been a bit of a disappointment as a 7-footer. About 8 points, 5 boards. Does give you about a block and a half per contest, but they're also not putting you under duress either. For Georgia Southern, they should be able to win the turnover battle as they're a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, this Old Dominion team, they're outside the top 290 with that regard. And Georgia Southern has been an okay three-point shooting defense. They're allowing teams to shoot 33.7%. That's a top 175 mark in the country. Old Dominion, they shoot about 34.5% or so as a collective. Now, Georgia Southern getting blasted on the glass. They're outside the top 250 in terms of offensive rebound percentage. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they have been giving up a lot of second and third chances, but in this game, I think that that's a little bit less of a concern. And you've got in the backcourt for this Georgia Southern team, a pair of guys like Tyrone Moore, Tavarius Spud Webb. They combine for 30.5 points per game, and for Moore, he gives you more from the outside, shooting 38% from 3-point. Both shoot 80+% the free throw line and a pressure spot as well. Kyrie Dillon is able to get her done. He's an 85% free throw shooter, 8.5 points per contest. Alden Applewhite, really the lone guy on the roster. He gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but 5.9 boards, 13.5 points per game. So I do think that in a pressure spot, Georgia Southern should be able to get the job done. I think that the ball control battle, with them also being a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, reigns supreme. So it is a circumstance where I said Georgia Southern as a 3-point favorite, one to lay up to 2.5 with them, 3.5 or more, taking the points with Old Dominion, and then 156.5 or less in on the over, 157.5 or higher the under, 737, 738. You've got Eastern Illinois, and they're going to be on the road against SIU Edwardsville. This is from Evansville, Indiana, for the OVC tournament, and Edwardsville is a 5.5 point favorite. Total this game 127.5 to 128.5. I do like the over. I set my total at a 130, mainly because I do think that this is going to be a game that's going to be close enough for late fouls. Neither of these teams are looking to push any sort of an aggressive tempo. For Eastern Illinois, 271st in terms of total possessions per game. Edwardsville is 310th, and these are two teams that are outside the top 270 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But with this Edwardsville team, one thing that they are able to do, grab some second and third chances. They're a top 220 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Eastern Illinois more around about 267th, and for Eastern Illinois, to their credit, they've been able to do a nice job in terms of guarding the 3-point line. They're a top 55 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, getting absolutely blasted down low, though. And this is not an Edwardsville team that's really looking to go bombs away from 3-point range. In terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line, Edwardsville is in the top 120 in all of college basketball. And for the Southern Illinois Edwardsville team, I do think that they are going to be able to do a good job here in terms of just being able to put the clamps down on defense. I did set them as a 6-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. They've been a top 35 team all season long in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Edwardsville, they did lose their top 2 scorers towards the beginning part of the season in Ring Malaith, coupled with as well Miles Thompson, but they have found a way without him. Tyler King has become the top scorer with about 9.5 points, shoots 35% from 3. Jack Champion is a nice point guard that gives you 5 assists, 39.5% 3-point shooting, about 8.5 points per contest. Joe Valeri is a little bit of a mixer and shaker. This team does not allow anything on the inside or the outside. Top 30 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They will give up second and third chances, but for Eastern Illinois, you really don't have a lot down low. Cooper Jacoby has been in the program for quite some time, but has never really ascended for this team. He right now is giving you about 11 points, 6.5 boards, a steal per contest. Tries to shoot threes, but he only shoots 23% from the outside. And Eastern Illinois as a whole, they shoot 32% from 3, outside the top 300 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. So getting land-based there. They're outside the top 275 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And though Eastern Illinois is a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis on defense, outside the top 300 in terms of taking care of the ball on offense. And Really, outside of Jacoby, you've got one other guy that gives you over 4.3 rebounds per game, Terry McMorris, 7.5 rebounds per game. Now, getting back Andre 3000 Washington in the backcourt was big for them midseason, but he went down with an injury once again, so Zion Brewster has to do it all by himself, 15 points per game. And even though it's an Edwardsville team that isn't trustworthy at the free throw line, it's 67.5% the charity stripe, I do think that the way that they're just so rock solid down low allows them to get the job done here. I'm willing to take the over, so I total 130, and with Edwardsville, we'll lay up to 5.5 with them. 739, 740. Little Rock is going to be playing against Lindenwood from Evansville. You've got Lindenwood, a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite. 148.5 to 150 is the total. I set my total at a 149. Personally, I would rather have the 150 to the under rather than the 148.5 to the over, because even though Lindenwood is a team that is looking to play at warp speed, 18th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, for one, Little Rock is a slower tempo team, 274th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, Little Rock is not a good defense. In games played away from home, teams are shooting 37.5% from three against them. They're well outside the top 260 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Lindenwood is a respectable defense, so top 100 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage away from home. They've been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of not allowing clean looks on the inside as well, and that's where this Little Rock team is really getting blasted right now. For Lindenwood, 98th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Little Rock in games played away from home, they're well outside the top 240. It's a Little Rock team and a Lindenwood team, for that matter, that neither of these teams are taking care of the ball. They're both outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Neither of these teams shoot well at the free throw line as well. So even if you get the late fouls, Little Rock is shooting 68% of the free throw line. Lindenwood in that neighborhood as well. With Little Rock, they've been able to shoot it relatively well from three at 36.1%, top 85 mark in the country. Very top heavy team. Jonathan Lawson, 16 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. He shoots 35.5% from three. Kachi Naze has been able to give you 11.5 points. He shoots 42% from 3 points. And then you've been able to have Tukan Gakic be able to give you about 9.5 points, about a block and a half, steal and a half per contest. So as a big man, he's been relatively versatile. But for Lindenwood, even though he doesn't really give you any sort of 3-point shooting, I do think that Jadis Jones is going to be able to leave his mark down low, 15.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. It's like a Lindenwood team that's been a top 200 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. And for Lindenwood, country average team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage, awful with their 3-point shooting percentage. They shoot 31.5% from the outside. And again, they shoot 68.3% at the free throw line. But they've been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, while they themselves outside the top 300 with regards to taking care of the ball. Dontrez Williams gives you about 15 points per game, and Aeneas Fattrell, 18 points, 6 boards, and he's actually shot 37.5% per three. Pretty much the lone guy on the roster outside of Jeremiah Tolton, who's not going to play in this game due to injury, that's shooting above 32.5% from three. So you've had a lot of low post play going on in this game. I think that this Lindenwood team has better depth. They've also been a top 50 team with regards to shot blocking. So you're at a 150. I like the under, and with Lindenwood, I think that they get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 with them, made them a 5-point favorite. 741, 742. Oral Roberts and UMKC are going to be doing battle out there in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's right now Oral Roberts an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. Ton's game is 147.5. These two teams just played a few days ago, and Oral Roberts in that game was a favorite of 4.5 points, and they completely dump trucked UMKC. They won that game by 15 plus points, and I took the points with UMKC in that game. I'm not going to make the same mistake. I set my line at 8.5. I'm laying the 8 with Oral Roberts. This UMKC team has covered 5 spreads this year. 5! They have played 30 games and they have covered 5 spreads. Like, good grief. You've got Uriah Evans, who's been able to give you 12 points, 4 assists per contest, but you just look at the metrics of this team. They're a sea of red. They're outside the top 340 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 320 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 330 with opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 320 in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're a bottom 15 team with their own 3-point shooting percentage. They're outside the top 300 with their free throw shooting percentage even. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, they're outside the top 320. They're literally doing nothing right. I wish I could say it any other way, but Marvin Menzies, how he's not out of a job right now is insane. And then for Oral Roberts, this is a team that's in the first year of a coaching regime, so they're looking to be able to build some upward momentum under Corey Barnett, and it's been a rough season for them, but at the very least, they've got the top scorer in this game, Ty Harper. He's been able to be 18 points, 2.5 assists per game, and then Connor Dow of Nazai. These two guys have been able to combine for about 24 points per contest. You've been able to get a little bit of something out of Luke Gray as well. He gives you about 8 points, 3.5 rebounds per game. Oral Roberts has not been great themselves. They're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They're getting blasted on glass outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage. They've been a little bit okay on the inside. They're a top 245 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but from the outside, they're about 300th with their 3-point shooting percentage outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But UMKC will put you on the free throw line. This team shoots 74.5% at the charity stripe. That's a top 110 mark in all of college basketball. And against a UMKC team that quite literally is one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, I think that they get the job done here. And I do think that's going to be a little bit of a lower scoring game here in a neutral court because I don't think that UMKC does their part with this total. So I'm willing to lay up to 80 or throw a Roberts, and I'm in on the under. Sub by total 144.5. Now we go to the Horizon League tournament. This is 743, 744. Northern Kentucky is going to be on the road against Oakland. You got true home court environments for this, by the way. Oakland a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Tallest game is 158.5, and with Oakland, I set them as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Now, Northern Kentucky has done a nice job in terms of generating turnovers, top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. That goes into the top 15 away from home, and away from home, they've been a top 50 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Here's the problem, though. You've got a Oakland team then has been very good in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and this Northern Kentucky team will gamble for turnovers. Outside the top 230 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 300 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage in games played away from home. Now you've got a quartet of guys that are really good scorers for this Northern Kentucky team. Khalil Robinson shoots 38% from 3, 14 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. LJ Wells, pair of assists, 7 boards, 14 points. And then you got Dan Gresinger, give you about 37% 3-point shooting, 16 points per game. Donovan Ode is that top scorer, pair of assists, pair of steals, 18.5 points per contest. But outside those main two guys, you've got Tate Ozer, who gives you about 9 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and then it's a big drop off from there. You only run about a 5.5 man rotation. And then for Oakland, they are a team that's outside the top 275 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, and overall they're about 300th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but not bad in terms of guarding the arc. They've ascended into the top 225 there, and they've been very efficient on the offensive side of things as well. They're a top 100 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They've got a nice point guard in Brody Robinson, 17 points, 7 assists. He shoots about 35.5% from 3, and then you've got a trio of guys that give you between 5.5 and 7.2 rebounds per game. Isaac Harris, 13.5 points, 7.2 boards. Michael Hoagie, 12.5 points, 5.4 boards. Bari Navarula, about 14 points, a steal, a block, 6 rebounds per game. So good versatility there. And then you've got Zaire Wells, who shoots at Wells from 3-point range, 39% 3-point shooter. This is a Oakland team that does a nice job winning the, shall we say, free throw battle as well. Top 15 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. They themselves are a top 60 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. They do shoot 75% at the charity stripe. It's a Northern Kentucky team that they shoot about 71% at the free throw line, outside the top 225 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. I do think that that's going to be just enough for them to be able to get the job done. In Northern Kentucky, they themselves outside the top 200 in terms of ball security. I think they get very much an up and down game. Oakland is looking to play quite fast in terms of total possessions per game, 62nd in the country. Northern Kentucky has been looking to gun it at 70th, so somebody told 163.5. I like the over, and with Oakland, I'm willing to lay the number. Made them a 5.5 point favorite. 745, 746. UW Milwaukee is on the road against Detroit, and Detroit finds themselves as a favorite of 2.5 to 3 points. So now this game 153.5, and I made a total of 155.5. I like the over, mainly because this is a Milwaukee team that's been very bad on defense. They are allowing teams in games played away from them to shoot over 38.5% from 3-point range, bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. In terms of just overall points allowed on a per possession basis in games played away from them, 339th. And for this UW Milwaukee team, Seth Hubbard and Danilo Jovanovic, two of your top scorers in terms of points per game. We have not seen them in about 2 months. They're not going to be playing in this game, so they are a little bit short-handed. You've got Amar Uyagard, who gives you about 13 points per game, but it's not necessarily an amazing 3-point shooter. To the credit of Milwaukee, top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but not as if Detroit was looking to generate too many turnovers to start with. They're right around about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Milwaukee, along with their bad 3-point shooting percentage defense, they're also 322nd in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Detroit, not too much better at about 286th, and you do have Faison Fields, who was dealing with a little bit of injury. He's back for this UW Milwaukee team right now. He's been able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per game down low, and then Aaron Franklin, about 7 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, but it's a Milwaukee team that's right now outside the top 200 in terms of both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and also only shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line, and their bad 3-point shooting defense is really going to cost them, as Detroit in conference play shot 40% from 3. In non-conference play, they were absolutely terrible, but they have been able to find it with TJ Nadu doing a nice job headlining things. 48% 3-point shooter, 13.5 points per game. Orlando Lovejoy is that versatile, do-it-all sort of guy. Doesn't really shoot it from 3, but 15.5 points, 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.5 per contest. He's been tremendous. Tyler Spratt is out, give you about 38% 3-point shooting as well. I think that this is a Detroit team that, with their really good 3-point shooting, with the fact that UW Milwaukee is not been able to guard a soul, and this Detroit team comes up with second and third chances. Top 70 team with regards to percentage of the missed shots that results in an offensive rebound that allows for a little bit of a higher scoring game. Even though Milwaukee's a relatively mid-tempo team, Detroit has been looking to push some tempo at about 119th in terms of total possessions per game. Milwaukee more around 175th, but I do think that you get some late fouls, so like the over, so my total 155.5, and with this Detroit bunch, willing to lay with them, set them as a 5.5 point favorite. 747, 748, you've got Robert Morris, and they're going to be playing us to Youngstown State. Youngstown State, a mid-tier underdog here of 4.5 to 5 points. 142.5 to 143 is the total. Set a total of 144.5. I do like the over. Again, I think that this is going to be just close enough for late fouls. Youngstown State, and neither here nor there team with regards to their tempo. In terms of total possessions per game, 187th, doesn't get much more mid-tempo than that. Robert Morris has been a bit slower at about 258th in the country, but with Robert Morris, they're doing a really good job in terms of being able to put points up on the board, mainly because they do a great job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. Top 15 team in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in an offensive rebound. Their main kryptonite has been turnovers. Robert Morris is outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, but when they get a good look from three, they hit it. They shoot 38.2% from three overall. That is 15th in the country in games played at home. That actually ascends 40.4% from three-point. If you look at just raw points scored on a per possession basis, this Robert Morris team is 65th in the country. Youngstown State is 137th. Youngstown State is a team that from three, they're shooting about 34.1%. That's country average, but they've been a top 75 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. Youngstown State also having a tough time taking care of the ball. 12.7 turnovers per game. That's outside the top 275 in the country, and they've got Chris Carroll caroling all the way to 17.5 points, 5 boards. Does shoot 40% from three. Rich Rolfe has been able to shoot 37% from three. Throws in there about 9 points per game. It's a big, giant collective of guys that give you between 4.1 and 5.2 rebounds per game. You've got about 4 different guys with Vladimir Zarzize give you about 8 points, 4 boards. He's been able to shoot about 35% from 3 points. And then you do have Emmanuel Zugalov, who really doesn't give you a lot of scoring with about 6 points, 3 boards per contest, but is a true 7-footer, gives you a pair of blocks per game. This is a group in Youngstown State, though, that is well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage with this Youngstown State team. They're pretty solid in terms of not allowing you to get to the free throw line too often, but for Robert Morris, I do think that they're going to be able to manhandle this game because you've got the goods and Mr. Deshaun Good, who's been shooting it, I'm not even kidding here, 59.3% from three-point range, 15.5 points, 8.5 boards per game. Ryan Prather throws in there 15.5 points. He shoots 37% from three. Darius Livingston, Alberto Vargas in the backcourt, they combined shoot about 39% from three-point range. Robert Morris in a pressure spot, they only shoot about 69.5% at the free throw line, but they knock down those threes. They give themselves second and third chances. I think that that's enough on their own floor to be able to get the job done, and they've been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. So I did set a line here of 6.5, one to lay with old Bobby Morrison. I like the over. Semi-total 144.5. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 749, 750. You've got Cleveland State, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Wright State. Wright State hopes to be the right side as 13 to 13.5 point favorites. Total is 161.5, and I made a total of a 160. I do like the under. Now you've got a Cleveland State team that's absolutely looking to gun it. 55th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, Wright State, much more of a mid-tempo team. They're 183rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I will say for Wright State, they've been allowing teams at home to shoot over 38% from three. Meanwhile, away from home, that falls below 31.5%. Big giant wackadoo split. And for Wright State, they themselves shoot 30.5% from three-point range at home, 40.6% away from home. I think that that's going to start to iron out a little bit more. Meanwhile, you've got a Cleveland State team that is shooting 37.9% from the outside. That is 24th in all of college basketball. Now, I did also set a line of a 14 because Cleveland State just 48 hours ago, they had to play an elimination game against IU Indy. I do think that that's going to take a little bit out of them. And for Cleveland State, they have not been very successful in terms of taking care of the ball. In terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, 263rd in all of college basketball. It's a Wright State team that, in specifically their home games, they've been able to do a solid job in terms of generating turnovers. For some reason, they don't necessarily do the world's greatest job in terms of having that carry over away from home, but Wright State, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they have become a top 200 team with this regard, and it's a Wright State team that has been a top 100 team with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. Trey Beard on the flip side for Cleveland State, he's been able to do a really nice job, give you 14 plus points per contest. He's shooting from three-point range in that neighborhood about 40% from three, and then you've been able to have Deon Nasai give you 15.5 points, 6.5 rebounds. Ice Emery and Jaden Lipscomb, these two guys combined shoot about 41% for three. Both give you 12.9 points per game, but very top-heavy team. And Cleveland State not doing a great job on defense. They're in the bottom 25 in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, hovering right around about 300th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And Michael Cooper, as a freshman for Wright State, has stepped up in a big way. He's right now leading the way with 13 points. He's 35% from three-point. You've got a pair of ancillary guys in Salle McCaglin along Dominic Pangonis that combine for 19.5 points. Both shoot above 38.5% from three-point. With Wright State, they've done a nice job in terms of being able to win the battle on the glass as well. They're a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. Cleveland State, they're outside the top 300 with this regard, and I do think that Wright State does a little things in terms of being able to get the ball inside. Top 100 team with regards to two-point shooting percentage. Michael Emery Ajay gives you about 12.7 rebounds per game to be able to get the job done here against the Cleveland State team that, again, I think that back-to-back sort of element is going to hurt them a bit here. So I did set my total at 160. I like the under, and for Wright State, we'll lay up to 13.5 with them, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-549, 306-550. We head out to the great state of Florida for Jacksonville versus Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 147.5, and I did set my total at 147. Now, I was seeing before a 144.5. Personally, I was able to get in on a 144.5 to the over, and if you were to be between like a 146 to a 148, I would rather take the 146 over, as I did set my total at a 147, mainly because Bellarmine, out of 365 Division I teams, 365th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Jacksonville team that is super slow, 334th in terms of total possessions per game, but they're giving it up on defense as well. Bellarmine, they're 309th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but Jacksonville, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, man, it's really been a fall for them. They are 313th in the country, and for Bellarmine, if they're in a pressure spot, they shoot 78.8% at the free throw line. That is in the top 10 in all of college basketball. You've got Jack Korzinski, who I think is the best player in this game, as right now for Bellarmine, he's been able to shoot darn near 40% for three, 21.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Brian Waddell along Keenan Gooding, they combine for about 27 points per game. Both shoot over 40% from three. Sam Donald has shot 40% from three, so just lots of guys are lighting it up there. And additionally, for this Jacksonville team, they're probably not going to be able to find a lot of second and third chances, as they've been rough with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Both of these teams have been. Bellarmine is a bottom 10 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Jacksonville, more of a country average team, but Jacksonville has been really giving it up on the inside as well. They're outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and it's a Bellarmine team that has been a top 20 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Hayden Wood, 11.5 points. He shoots about 37.5% from three, but Jacksonville as a whole, they shoot only about 32.2% from the outside. As a matter of fact, they're 311th in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage against D1 opponents. They do allow you to get to the free throw line as well. They're a top 40 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Jacksonville not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and don't have a single guy on the roster other than Jason Thirdkill, up to 5.3 rebounds per game, give you over 4.7 boards per contest. So do think that Bellarmine, in a nice little bit of an offensive shootout, though it's going to be a slow shootout, does find a way to be able to get the job done. Like I said, I took an initial 144.5 to the over. We have seen this move up by 3 points. 147 is my total, but that said, I would rather take a 146.5 to the over rather than like a 147.5, 148.5 to the under. So I personally took the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 here with Bellarmine. 306-551, 306-552. North Alabama is going to be on the road against Florida Gulf Coast. Dunk City does find themselves as a 6.5 to a 7.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 142.5 to 143.5. And with Florida Gulf Coast, they are out there in the state of Florida, so they do have a little bit of advantage here. But I can only set them as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be 167 plus here with North Alabama. For Florida Gulf Coast, they were towards the beginning part of the season doing a great job from three. They become a country average team with their outside shooting, and the defense has not been great for them. 285th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, North Alabama is really not doing a whole heck of a lot of anything well. 343rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're playing very slowly. They're 300th in terms of total possessions per game. They're just not efficient on defense. They're also outside the top 330 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. North Alabama just 285th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, while this Florida Gulf Coast team is more around about 159th. But for Florida Gulf Coast, we have really been seeing that wane a little bit more, even though you are going to have the top overall just scorer in this game in J.R. Kaczynski. Comes over from Notre Dame, 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, pair of assists. He shoots only about 32% from three. Jordan Ellerby, he's eating good in the neighborhood, shoots 38% from three, 13.5 points per game. Isaiah Malone gives you a pair of blocks, 5.5 boards, 7 points per game. Michael Dwaks, I've always expected more out of him. Coming over from Northern Iowa, about 7 points, 5 boards, a steal, a half a block per contest. He's just a little bit of a gadget guy, but this is a team that can be very much had from the outside for Florida Gulf Coast. They're hovering right around about 300th with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Florida Gulf Coast has been a top 175 team in terms of rebound percentage, so they've been able to do a respectable job there, but North Alabama's able to match that because North Alabama has a guy in Dante Bacchus who's been able to give you 15 points, 6 rebounds per game. Kenan Jefferson, one of their main guys in the backcourt, continues to be injured, but he was only shooting 30% from three to start with. Cornelius Williamson, about 12.5 points, 9.5 boards, gives you just under a block per contest. So North Alabama, not necessarily the world's worst team on the glass. They just have really not been able to shoot it well from three. at 30.7%. That puts them outside the top 320 there. They're also outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So lots of issues on that front, but you do have Dallas Howell, who's able to give you some versatility, a steal, a block, 8.5 points, right around about 3.5 rebounds per game. It's a bunch that does an okay job in terms of not putting you on the free throw line. They themselves only shoot about 68.7% at the free throw line, and if Florida Gulf Coast needs to cover this game at the charity stripe, they do shoot just 71.8% at the free throw line. I do think that the low post play of North Alabama is going to do just enough for them to remain lively against a Florida Gulf Coast team that just has had a tough time shooting it from three recently. So I did set a total of 144.5. I do think that the late fellows push you over in Florida Gulf Coast, top 125 team in terms of total possessions per game. So like the over and at 7+, we'll take the points with North Alabama. 306-553, 306-554. Stetson is playing against Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky, 3.5 to 4.5 point favorite. So on this game, 154.5 to 156.5. I'm taking the points here with Stetson. I did set them as a 3.5 point underdog. It's a Eastern Kentucky team that's fast but not warp speed fast, 127th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Stetson is more around 230th, and Stetson is getting absolutely blasted on the defensive side of things. 346th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Eastern Kentucky is 350th. So both of these teams are just getting absolutely lambasted with that regard. It's an Eastern Kentucky team that's been pretty good on offense, 119th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Stetson, they're well outside the top 200, but they were much better in conference play. In non-conference play, they hardly shot above 30% from three. In conference play, they shot above 38% from three-point range. Eastern Kentucky, overall, they shoot 34.8% from the outside, 140th in all of college basketball. Stetson overall for the season, 35.8%, 41.4% at home, 31.6% away from home. Again, shot it much better away from home when they were in conference play. And for the Stetson group, they've been able to do so without their top scorer in Jamari Phillips, who he was averaging 16 points per game, but Ethan Copeland, Colin Cool, they've stepped up in the interim, give you about 28 points per game, and Copeland shoots 42% from three-point range. You've been able to get a pair of assists out of him as well. It's a Stetson team that's not going to put you under duress. About 300th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Eastern Kentucky used to be amazing at generating turnovers. Now they're outside the top 175 with that regard. That's big for a Stetson team that has been about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Stetson is just getting absolutely dump truck down low. They're outside the top 340 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, but are a top 200 team themselves in terms of their own two-point shooting percentage. And then for Eastern Kentucky, you got a pair of guys in the backcourt in Juan Cranford along with Turner Buttrey, who've done a nice job combining for about 22.5 points per game. Both shoot about 36% from three. Montavious Myrick has been able to supply the team with about 12 points, 7 boards at a block per contest. So he's been relatively solid down low. And Eastern Kentucky, top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they're also a team that's just getting blasted with regards to percentages. They're outside the top 290 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. I think that helps the Stetson team hold in there, and Stetson is a little bit of a slower tempo team, 230th in terms of total possessions per game. I do like the under as a result of my total at a 153.5, and I'm going to take 4+ here with Stetson. 306-555, 306-556 in North Florida. They're going to be playing against West Georgia. West Georgia, 3.5 point favorites, 157.5 is the total. I set my total 163.5. I like the over. I have a North Florida team that's absolutely looking to gun it. Top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. Georgia, they are 79th in the country, and for West Georgia, away from home, they're shooting 34.7% from three. That's the top 110 mark. North Florida is the top 65 team with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage away from home at just a hair above 36%, but man, this North Florida defense out of 365 Division I teams, 364th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and games played away from home, teams are grabbing 39.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. North Florida, while they love to bomb it from three-point range, they give it up from three-point range as well. They allow opponents to shoot 35% from three-point range. That's outside the top 230 in all of college basketball. West Georgia is actually a relatively decent three-point shooting defense. They're 155th. Teams shoot 33.6% from the outside, and Sheldon Williams-Dryden, 20 points, 9 boards. He gives you a pair of assists per game. He's probably the most versatile player in this game. Now, I love what Cam Arroyo brings to the table for North Florida, 20.5 points, 4 assists. He shoots about 41% from three. And then Mason Lee, Dalton Gaiman, they both shoot about 37.5% from the outside and combined about 18 points per game out of those two guys. And they do combine for 11 rebounds per game. Kent Jackson, number 2 scorer, 14 points per game. But you don't have a lot of depth with this North Florida team. They also get absolutely tattooed down low. They're a bottom 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. We'll say West Georgia, they leave something to be desired in the post as well. This is a group that has been outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, right around 300th with opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. But Josh Smith in the backcourt, 16 points. He shoots about 34.5% from three. Colton Griffin has stepped up, shooting 35% from three. He supplies the team with about 8 points, and he and Malcolm Noel have been able to combine for a little bit under 6.5 assists per game as well. It's a West Georgia team that is a top 175 team in terms of ball security, and it's a North Florida team that has been relinquishing the ball quite a bit. They're outside the top 270 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and I think that allows West Georgia to get the job done here. An high-scoring expose. I did set my total at a 163.5. I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 with West Georgia. 306-557, 306-568. You've got USC Upstate, and they're going to be playing against Gardner-Webb. This is from ETSU's home campus, and for USC Upstate, they're a 10 to a 10.5 point favorite total on this game, 148 to 149, and I saw this at a 9.5. I laid the 9.5, and I'm willing to lay up to 12.5 here with Upstate. I made them a 13 point favorite. This Gardner-Webb team, man, they are really not good. They are a bottom 10 team in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Bottom 15 team in terms of rebound percentage. I recognize that USC Upstate, not great on offense. They're 314th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but a solid defense. They're a top 165 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got a trio of double-figure scorer. Carmelo Atkins, 13.5 points, 5 boards, and assists and a half per contest. Kamani Gregory, Mason Bettinger, they combine for about 30.5 points per game. All three guys shoot between 32.4 and 32.6% for 3 points. That's better than Gardner-Webb, actually. And then you've been able to have a guy in Isaiah Skinner be able to do a nice job as a bit of a mixer and shaker, a steal, pair of assists, 5 points, shoots 35% from 3 points for a group that has been in the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and that's big because it's a Gardner-Webb team that is looking to play up tempo. Top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game. They're a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and they're actually a top 320 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, well outside the top 300 with their 3-point shooting percentage, so that's going to be big for them. It's a Gardner-Webb team that's also a bottom 5 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. They've got 2 double-figure scores. Jacob Algarth, 11 points, 7 rebounds per game, and then Jacob Hudson, 10 points, right around 4 boards per contest, and Algarth actually shoots 40% for 3, but he's attempted less than 23s thus far this season. He, along with Hudson, are the lone 2 guys on the roster that give you over 3 rebounds per game. They have absolutely nothing down low. For Gardner-Webb, outside the top 320 in terms of ball security, they're outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They are not giving themselves any second and third chances. Bottom 20 team there. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. I think that this is going to be a land basement, and a sad season for Gardner-Webb comes to an end here. I just don't think that Gardner-Webb does their part with the total, so my total at 147, so I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12.5 here with Upstate, 306-559, 306-560. Home court environments for these last 4 games for the Northeast Conference Tournament. Stone Hills on the road against Lemoyne. Lemoyne is a 6.5 to a 7-point favorite. 134.5 is the total, and I do like the under. I did set my total at a 133.5. Have a Stone Hill team that has been playing at a very slow tempo in terms of total possessions per game. This unit is currently 251st in the country, and both of these teams have been very good with regards to their interior defense. Lemoyne is a top 50 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Same goes for Stone Hill. Stone Hill's not shooting well on the inside. They're well outside the top 300 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. They've been able to get a little bit of something going from the outside at about 32.5% from 3. In conference play, that actually dipped to 31.2%, but you do have a guy in Devontae Hackett. He had a 40-point game about a week or so ago. That was a game that they played against St. Francis of Pennsylvania. He's been able to step up, give you about 13 points, 4 boards per contest. Herman Coffey is up to 13 points. He shoots 37.5% from 3, and then Chad Stinson has been a nice piece in the backcourt, 11.5 points, 5.5 boards. Ravon Tujic, along with Raymond Espino Guzman, they combine for 13 rebounds per game, and that's going to be a little bit tough for Lemoyne to be able to match up with, but you do have Shiloh Jackson. Love his versatility with about 16 points, 8 boards, and then you've had Trent Mascara be very scary to match up with, as he's been able to shoot about 36% from 3 points for a Lemoyne team that's in the top 150 with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. Now, it is a bunch that has been having their issues taking care of the ball outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Stone Hill is a bottom 20 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so that very much helps them out here. And then Tennessee Rainwater, actual name, shoots 48% from 3, about 10 points per contest. For the line in a pressure spot, they shoot about 72% in the free throw line. That's right around about country average. They've been a line team to shoot about 35.5% from 3-point, but I do think that this is going to be a very low tempo game with Lemoyne. They don't give themselves any second and third chances outside the top 320 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. That's with Stone Hill being outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. I think that that's costly to them. So, like the under, so I told 133.5, want to lay up to 7 with Lemoyne. 306-561, 306-562. Fairleigh Dickinson is on the road against Mercy Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst, a 4.5-point favorite. 134.5 is the total. I like this total under. I set my total at a 128. Both of these teams are playing ridiculously slow. Mercyhurst is 30th in terms of total possessions per game. Fairleigh Dickinson outside the top 350, and Fairleigh Dickinson just not the offense that we've seen in the past. They are outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Have a pair of guys in Joey Niesman and Eric Parnell in the backcourt that combine for 23.2 points per game, and Niesman does shoot 35% from three. Overall for this Fairleigh Dickinson bunch, outside the top 320 with their three-point shooting percentage at 31.2%, and for Fairleigh Dickinson, they've done a better job on the glass, top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Mercyhurst is not going to be able to match up with that, but they're also Fairleigh Dickinson outside the top 230 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Mercyhurst has been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, top 100 team with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage as well. And Fairleigh Dickinson, for as bad as they shoot it from three, they're a top 100 team with regards to percentage of their shots that come from three-pointers. Now, you do have Tashad Jackson, 8.5 boards, 10.5 points per game, a true 7-footer, and Cyril Martinoff give you about 8 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but I do think that Mercyhurst is going to be able to find a way to persevere through that because they've been able to get a lot out of Kadir Martin, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, 6.5 boards, best shot blocker in this game with nearly 2.5 blocks per game. If you have a pressure spot for Mercyhurst, top two scorers, Jake Lellerman, Bernie Blunt, both shoot above 84.9% the free throw line. Lellerman shoots 40% for three, 14 points, 3 assists per game. Blunt, 17.5 points, 2.5 assists. Seal shoots 35% from three-point range, and then you've gotten quite a bit recently out of Mykolas Ivanauskas, 7.5 points, 5 boards, not shooting it from three the way they did a season ago, but does give the team just some stretchability with regards to their defense. It's also a bunch that has been in the top 150 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. For Mercyhurst, they are a team that they leave something to be desired with their overall shooting percentages. They're outside the top 225 in terms of points per possession, but with the way that their defense locks down and the way that they generate turnovers, I think that they win and cover this game in a slog. So, my line at 6, willing to lay with Mercyhurst, and like the under, so my total 128, 36.563, 36.564. Central Connecticut plays Osel Wagner. Wagner is a underdog of 4 to 4.5 points, 139.5 to 140 is the total. I like the under. I did set my total at a 137. Both of these teams are playing very slowly, 286th in the country in terms of total possessions per game for Wagner. Central Connecticut, 337th. And for Central Connecticut, it is a group that shoots it quite well from three-point range. Right now, they are shooting 35.8%. That is a top 80 mark in the country. That goes up to 37.5% at home. At Wagner, they shoot 38.5% from three-point range away from home. That is a top 30 mark in the country, and both of these teams have had their wars on defense. Wagner is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You've got a Central Connecticut team that's 222nd. Interestingly, they've been giving up about 7.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. They've been able to iron out those splits a little bit more. They've been much better with their defense here in the last month or so at home, and you do have a Central Connecticut team that has been outside the top 250 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but for Central Connecticut, I do think that they persevere in this spot because, in my opinion, they've got the best player in the game. Darren Smith, 20.5 points, 5 boards at about 6'7". He shoots 37% from three-point range. Max Frazier, he gives you 7 boards, 12 points per game. Jay Rogers is up to about 7 assists per game. It's a Central Connecticut team that has been a top 225 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. And Wagner, to their credit, they've been a top 175 team in terms of rebound percentage as well. But with the Central Connecticut team, they also don't put you on the free throw line. Top 10 team in terms of fewest fouls given on a per game basis. They've also been a top 150 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And Wagner has been very sloppy with the ball. Wagner, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, they are outside the top 320. In all of college basketball, they're outside the top 300 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, so they are outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've got Nick Jones as your lone double-figure scorer, give you 14 points, 2.5 assists per game. You've had Eduardo Placer shoot about 39% from three. Throws in their 8.5 points per game. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. Sam Smith was one of their top scorers. He's been dealing with ailment. They've gotten back Travis Gray, and he's been able to make nice contributions with double figures. He's actually had a double-double, as a matter of fact, in each of the last 4 games, so he's been able to step up, give this team right around about 9.6 rebounds per game. But I do think that for Wagner, it's going to be a little bit tough against a Central Connecticut team that has been able to do a pretty soft job down low. I think that the low amount of possessions keep you under. So I'm on line at 5. I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 at Central Connecticut. And I like the under. So my total 137, and wrap things up with 306.565, 306.566. Long Island plays those to Chicago State. Chicago State finds themselves as a underdog of 11 to 11.5 points. So this game 137 to 138.5, and made Long Island the 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Long Island team that has been up and down with their defense. Overall, they're, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 74th in the country, as they've done a nice job being a top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Chicago State has become a top 80 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Here's the problem for them, though. They are getting absolutely blasted down low. They are 365th out of 365 Division I teams in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Chicago State, they've been better with their 3-point shooting here in conference play, but they're still only about 276 in all of college basketball, and they are going to give it up from 3-point range as well. This is a Chicago State unit that right now now as allowing teams to shoot 37.6% from three-point range away from home. That is outside the top 300 of college basketball, and they don't have a single player on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game against a Long Island team that is a top 75 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Jamari Fuller has been able to lead the way with Fuller 16.5 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, shoots 44% from 3, and then Malachi Davis, Greg Echo-Gordon, they combine for 28.2 points per game, 6.3 assists between the two of them. Also 3 steals per game between the two, and then Jomo Goings has been able to give you 10.5 points. Sion Apricatas, he shoots about 37.5% from 3-point. We'll say for Chicago State, even though they've got absolutely nothing down low, the banged up guards towards the beginning part of the season have come along for the ride. Doyle Cockrell along Stephen Byard, both missed 4+ games. They're combining for about 21 points per game between the two of them. Do shoot 38% from 3. CJ Ray has been your biggest ray of sunshine down low. Steele, 13.5 points, 5 boards, shoots 37.5% from 3, but it's also a Chicago State team that's still in the bottom 10 in the country with their own 2-point shooting percentage. That's a little bit of an issue. If they can get to the free throw line, they do shoot 74.5% at the charity stripe, and this is a Long Island team that has actually been pretty solid in terms of not allowing free throw attempts, so I think that works to their disadvantage. I do think that this Chicago State team is really going to be had down low in this game, so I did set Long Island as a 12.5 point favorite, 1 to lay up to 12 of them. I like the over, semi-total at a 140.5, and that wraps things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to Ivetta Abramyan for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have 1 or 2 ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GU_D1. Keep in mind, Larsiam, the mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every game, every day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.